Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. It's the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. This week, I've got a crowd of characters here ready to talk about all the RPGs of April, or at least get a start on it. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me today, let's go down the list. I've got George Foster.
Hello, everyone.
We have Josh Torres.
That was an upbeat intro, Brian. Are you okay?
I'm just trying to change it up. Just trying to not be so robotic and always use the same verbiage every time.
Here's our cast of characters. They all have different paths, unique paths, but here's our
they all have a singular character gimmick. We have Adam Vitale. Wait, what is George's?
George says that he's British. Yeah,
I knew it.
Adam is here.
What's up?
We have James Galizio.
Video games.
True. And finally, we have Chow Min Woo is joining us again.
Wow, I don't have a proper introduction still, but hello.
Hello, Chow. So we are about halfway through April. Obviously, we are a few days removed from the release of SaGa Frontier Remastered. By this time next week, we'll be a few days or a day removed by the release of Nier Replicants Remaster. We've got a few other early and late April releases to talk about. Obviously, we've got a bunch more release dates kind of peppering into the summer months. As for the slate of news this week, stop me if I'm a broken record. It's maybe a little bit lighter, but we will make up for it because we have, so many colorful characters here to discuss the games we've been playing, new or old. So before we get to the news, let's go through that. Now, I know I can't pick Adam to go first. Who am I allowed to pick to go first? How about George went first last time?
You haven't gone first in a while.
Yeah, ever.
Oh, okay. Ever. I spent a few weeks there where I hadn't really played much, so I just kind of quietly skipped myself. I'm like, no one will notice. But this week I actually did pick up something on a whim.
No one cares about anyone who doesn't play a video game.
Well, what did you pick up?
So obviously, a little over a week ago, Trails of Cold Steel 4 released on PC. So I went ahead and I downloaded it and I booted it up. And I kind of sat there on the title screen thinking you know what? I really should give this game its best chance. Do my due diligence. And I knew you'd be justified going into it because the what I'm trying to avoid saying here is that crossbell games. Obviously, anyone who knows much about the Kiseki or the Trail series knows that they're all kind of interlocked and webbed together, but there is no official English localization for two of the games squarely in the middle of the current series. And that's just kind of this weird thing hanging over Cold Steel series, especially 3 and 4. So I sat there and I exited the game and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go and figure out how to boot up the about a year old fan translation for Trails from Zero made by the Geofront fan translation group. So it was actually pretty simple to figure out. I went to a Japanese online retailer DL site, downloaded the Joyoland, I believe, Chinese PC port of the game.
No, the DL site sells the Japanese version, which Falcom released themselves.
Okay. James I assume is going to be bouncing off me a few times here because he is very much in the know of this series and actually has his Discord avatar based on a character from that game that I didn't realize going in. And it was pretty simple for me to figure out, and I ended up basically playing through that game in a week. I started and finished Trails from Zero, the first of the Crossbell duology, in the last week.
So did you just mainline it, or did you do side quests and whatnot?
I did side quests, but it does help that I have the 4x turbo and the
that's
instant
true
text and the instant text all the text boxes fill in instantly or whatever.
Well, I'll have a secret because I wrote Trails guides, and I'll tell you why I stopped writing a guide for Zero because I missed one of those books, the backdoor doctor books.
That's it. Your guide's invalid then.
So what Chow is talking about is that in most Trails games, there's a series of newspapers or books that you gather, and you usually get something good at the end if you get all of them. luckily I like constantly saved in like a different save spot. So a few times I'm like, oh crap, I missed something. Like I was able to kind of backtrack and not lose too much progress.
Well, I got a big
so-
secret for you. Well, I play, was it Trails of the Azure? I use only one save file, so
That's living life to the edge. I like it.
So yeah, I'm the sort of person that whenever I play any RPG, I don't save in a new slot every time, but like every other hour I'll make a new save. So by the end, I'm usually sitting on like 30 to 40 of them.
Okay, before we move on, like just a save, like making saves in an RPG, just around the table. Are you guys the type to like save in either multiple slots or one slot, and then but you save over that one slot multiple times in the same save?
I live life on the edge. I save over the same save slot over and over again.
that's me.
One slotter there.
Okay, but are you like me where like I'm paranoid, so I make a save like 2 or 3 times before I move on over the same slot? It's like, oh, did I save? And then we just gonna make another save. Like in
Go
this,
in the
like,
menu and save 3 times.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Depends on
Yep.
the game. Like, if it's an RPG, then yeah, I'll consider maybe there's choices to be made. And I want to see the end of it, but otherwise, no, just go for it.
Well,
Usually I only do the save multiple times thing if it's like, okay, I just finished a section of this game that was absolute ass. I gotta make sure that I save.
Well, the reason why I do one save file a lot of the time, because as a kid growing up, you're playing cartridge-based games, and we like to keep it like this. It's like the first save file belongs to my older brother, the second save slot's mine, and the third slot, it's kind of like whatever. So it's kind of like we just keep it one save file only, right?
Yeah, like hey man, like memory cards like what 8 megabytes back then, even lower before the PS2 one. So like oddly enough, like the file size of a save was like a luxury because of the small memory cards that we had. But yeah, these days I don't know about me. I feel like I'm a paranoid gamer when it's just like I'm gonna use this save file, but I'm gonna use it again and again, like 2 or 3 times before I move on. And like I save constantly too. Like whenever I pass by like a save point, like I'll just take that time to save because I'm just there. And I don't know why. It's not like I ever got like save corrupted too. It's not like I have like some sort of like weird trauma about having a save corruption. It's just a habit now, and I don't know why.
So for Trails from Zero, I ended up with like 40 save slots. But this is kind of interesting to talk about because I'm talking about a pretty easily available fan translation, but it is a fan translation. It's not officially localized, but it was kind of such a low hurdle that anyone who's a fan of the series, should like at least seek out what's necessary to play it. And I don't want to just like say, okay, here's everything that happened in the game, because obviously this is a series where you don't really want to do that for preserving everyone else's experience.
One thing
but
I do want
wanna-
to say is it's a fan translation, but because of how easily accessible it is, and I'd say the actual quality of the translation, that if you're a fan of the series, you absolutely should go out of your way to play it because
it is really good, really high quality.
yeah.
So one thing that even like before I go into more details about my impressions of the game, apparently in March this year, if I remember right, they actually took NISA's port of Cold Steel 4, not port, localization of Cold Steel 4, and they took some of the phrasing there to update their translation for similar terms in this Crossbell game. So that's kind of like the attention to detail that the team at Geofront has had. So I thought that was really kind of like above and beyond being more logically consistent compared to like the PSP version of Trails in the Sky, which has some weird early, proto translations. So I want to touch on some highlights of this game. Like, I really liked it a lot. It's definitely like in my top 3. I don't know exactly where it would land for the series. The first thing, the first 2 things actually that I really enjoyed about it is that within like 10 or 15 minutes of booting up the game, you are introduced to your core 4 cast of party members, basically your special support section, Void Bannings, and then the 3 other playable characters. And that's pretty much the core of the game throughout the whole game, which is kind of like, I don't know, I knew some details about this game going in, just like through osmosis in general, like with all of the series, but that wasn't what I was expecting. But I actually think it worked really well compared to some other later games in the series where that is definitely not the case. so it really allows the cast to like have some time to like build up and build a rapport with each other and really kind of go into detail where it's not just a bunch of different characters just getting like their one word in and that's all because they're crowded out. No, it really does kind of flesh out these people that obviously I had played Cold Steel 3 before this, which was maybe a mistake, though obviously you could argue it's justified because local official releases don't exist. But that was one thing that I thought was really cool about Trails from Zero.
It's also
Another
it's interesting that you mentioned that because even at the time when this was released, like it's still a similar sentiment because this is coming off from Trails from the Third at that time, and that even that game had like even though it's a unique
12 or
structure,
13 or
it's
14,
still,
yeah.
yeah, it's still a somewhat bloated cast even on that end, right? Because you still have pretty much all the available characters from the first two games plus some in that trilogy as well. So even on that end, it still felt like a nice, smarter, scaled back from even from the other end of the Trails series.
And it's
Yeah,
just
Trails-
really interesting to have like a JRPG where you have your entire party from the get-go, pretty much.
Yeah, like Final Fantasy X-2 style or whatever. And Trails Third is kind of one of those interesting games where they almost kind of like just like why not when answering like, should Josette, this minor character, be playable? Sure, why not? And a few other surprise characters in that game that probably didn't really suit the game that much. But Trails Third is one of my favorites, so I don't want to bag on it too much.
Well, even like the first Cold Steel game being another sort of reset for the series, you're introduced to like 11 characters off the bat, and you don't get to play them all right away. But still, I almost feel like from the get-go, that's almost like too much. Like you're inevitably going to be distilling or diluting, character building if you're spreading it out across such a large class.
And then one thing that's sort of related is that obviously this was the fourth total game in the series after the three that took place like in the Liberal Kingdom with Trails in the Sky trilogy. So they could kind of press the reset button on a few things. So the scope of the game was kind of scaled back. The stakes start out smaller and they do escalate a bit towards the end. But it's just kind of nice to play an entry in the series where you can have chapters be compelling about these are just some early chapter story premises, no clear spoilers, but like an early chapter talking about a local mafia basically shakedowning villages with a series of with basically underhanded tactics, or like a threat made to a performing arts center, basically if someone's life is in danger, and things like that, where it's just like little conflicts that a small group of rookie, policemen, not bracers, would be able to like. It makes sense, and there's like after playing, I've only played 3 of the 4 Cold Steel games, but even by the end of the second, start of the third one, the stakes and the scales have gotten like so almost ludicrously massive, where it's like every single conflict is between titans almost, and you've got like all the big mech battles or whatever that are coming into play in there as well. So it was actually kind of nice to see a little bit of like a scope shrink where it's like, can we tell a compelling story based around one city, based on these like lower level conflicts, which yes, do eventually kind of cord together towards a larger thing at the end. But the fact that it was able to do that kind of actually makes me more interested in something like Kuro no Kiseki, the new one that they've recently just revealed for a Japanese release. If they can do the same sort of thing where they can say like, all right, we've had our fun basically dialing it up to 11, 12, 13 with the Cold Steel games. Maybe we can bring it back a bit. We can kind of shrink the scope and still tell compelling stories. So that was the second major thing from Trails from Zero that I really enjoyed playing through. There were a couple things that were kind of, how do I word this? Here, I'll start with this anecdote. Like 4 times within the first 3 chapters of the game, your special support section is bailed out by people that are more capable than you, which is kind of like a running trope for the series, I guess, especially prevalent in Cold Steel games. And it's sort of the thing where it's like it's not as prevalent or as obnoxious here, but I can kind of see like, oh, like they started playing with that kind of conflict resolution idea in this game, and that I know they're gonna kind of keep going to this well in the later series.
Not so
There's
fast.
also, yeah, basically. There's also a point in the game where two characters literally do the hello first name, or should I say first name, last name, title from place, that sort of thing, back to each other. So I'm just
I'm
kind
going
of
to explain to you who you are, even though you are probably familiar with that information.
yeah, so it's kind of like, all right, Falcom has their manner of storytelling, and I think it really is kind of ham-fisted in some ways, but it comes with the territory. Now it's like it's not going to be too fruitful to really dwell on it too much. But I'm like, oh, okay, like this wasn't invented with Cold Steel; it was here, all along. But
do characters ever remind each other how long it's been since the last time they met? Maybe in the next game they will.
They do. They do, but I think
You do that a lot in later games.
Sometimes the context of it ends up making sense because they're trying to piece together kind of like a timeline of events. Like, when did this major event happen 6 years ago, and when did this character first get involved 5 years ago, and then that
Like a
person
detective.
ended up. Yeah, so they kind of do that, but like in the framework of what happened in what order, because that's part of like a mystery of the game. One of the last things I'll say is that one thing I wasn't expecting going into this is that it really is a sequel to Trails Third, and it does really follow up on some of that game's like plot beats deliberately. In a way I wasn't expecting, because I thought, oh, new cast, new location, it's not really going to touch on those things, but that's kind of not true. Like, you could argue that the main conflict of at least Trails from Zero, obviously I haven't played Azure yet, is that it really follows up on one of the main conflicts of Trails Third, even though the stage has changed. So it does it kind of in a different way, but it really kind of feels like if I was talking about this game 10 years ago, or however long ago, and it'd be like, can you play Trails from Zero in an alternate universe where it was localized without playing the Sky trilogy? I'd be like, I don't know about that. So I already feel like I'm getting my
Yeah,
my Trails
and
series badge.
yeah,
Good.
like I even asked about that during my Kondo interview a few years back, and his outright response was that thing in particular. And I know what you're talking about. It's obvious to anyone that's played Zero and Trails Third. His argument is that he didn't see it as so much you needed to play Trails in the Sky, but rather, oh, it gets people that maybe just started with Zero interested in Trails in the Sky to go backwards. I'm not sure if I agree with that argument, but it is word of God, the reason why it's there. So
I mean, look, of course they're gonna say that, so it makes more people likely to bite instead of feeling gatekept. So it's a very, it feels like in your heart what it should be, but for the sake of marketing, this is what has to be said at the same time.
And I mean, Josh, you've played Zero,
Oh,
haven't you?
yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh yeah,
so,
for sure.
yeah.
I agree. I agree. But it's also like when people say, "Hey, you can start with Trails of Cold Steel 3." It's like, can you? I don't know.
I mean, you can maybe handwave arguments for Zero or Cold Steel 1 as being like, if you have the understanding that you're going to have to glean broad strokes from information you don't have, but I can't see Cold Steel 3.
I do like that. Like this, over the course of this conversation, like the only thing that sticks out on my mind, like the imagery I have in my mind, was like in that era when they released that East versus Trails fighting game on the PSP, and like the hidden unlockable secret character, OP character, and that was Lloyd. It's like, and then like in the competitive scene, Lloyd was banned because he was too good.
In the actual game, he's really weak lore wise.
I actually really kind of like Lloyd as a character. He's not perfect. There is a lot of ways where he's basically proto-Reen. Like, he has a lot of the same characterizations in a way where he's like constantly flattered, where I'm just kind of like rolling my eyes.
I like Lloyd. I just feel like Lloyd is kind of like an idiot if you choose to be an idiot in there, but you make the right choice. He's like a complete like ace detective. But that's how I see him.
The reason why I like him is kind of twofold. One, he's like confident in his abilities, and like Reen sort of is, but he always kind of like follows up any statement with like, I couldn't have done diddly squat without all of my friends who really carried me. It's like, Reed, shut up. Like you're like Reed, you're like insanely talented, like God-given native ability, and like you still kind of constantly have to play like this, like oh, I'm so humored by everyone else. Where Lloyd's kind of like, yeah, I studied my ass off at the police academy, and therefore I'm really confident in my skills, and I know I can do this. Not in every case, but
that's
a lot of the time.
I prefer Lloyd over all the Trails protagonists so far. Like even over Estelle, even over Kevin. Like I understand, like I like them too, but I think out of like the main protagonists, I think Lloyd is still my favorite out of them.
And of course, now I'm at the place where the game deliberately ends like with stuff you like. It's almost kind of like I wasn't expecting it to be this blunt about it. The game basically ends with like a monologue. I'm not going to say what the details of that are, but saying like, here are all the things we don't know yet. Player, you don't know the answer to these questions. Literally, these questions we're typing out for you. Better play the next game. And it's just like, oh.
And the funny thing is that as far as Trails goes, like Zero probably has the smallest cliffhanger out of all of the first entries to each of the arcs in the series.
It actually has like a self-contained ending. If it ends there, no one would care.
Yeah.
I actually do like how its conflict really isn't self-contained, as expected from a game in the series. It does kind of have like tethers to a bunch of other different, machinations of different, groups, and obviously the enforcers in Ouroboros play a role, and other societies play a role, but it's largely self-contained. Where it's like, how do I say this? In all the other games, you're fighting like a bunch of people who are cameoed in a bunch of different places, and I already kind of mentioned that it's like battles among titans of people who have been around forever, who are incredibly powerful. But Zero, without going into any more detail, really isn't quite like that. So it was kind of nice, kind of like how Trails FC was, where the final antagonist there was just kind of like had like a personal vendetta with larger ambitions, but it wasn't like this big planned orchestration thing that Cold Steel 3 becomes and 4 becomes.
I'm sorry, Brian, but it retroactively becomes that with the most recent release of Zero, where they have like that Juna as like an NPC model in that game.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Where what version of the game is that? The Vita version?
It's the Kai version.
The Kai version.
Oh, the Kai version. Yes. Okay, and that's coming out on Steam, not in America, obviously, but with the Steam release for Asian countries.
Don't own that version, but do they have Towa in there too?
Yes, and Azure.
So like retroactively going back and saying like, all right, how can we interconnect this further? Because clearly we missed it first time or something.
It's like, all right, it's a silly addition, but whatever.
But so if anyone's interested in playing this, I don't want to talk like, oh, I went way out of my way to play this, and now no, everyone else has to wait. Like I went to this website, DL site, just managed my way through with a machine translator. The game was like 1,300 yen, and I got like a coupon for being a first-time customer. It cost me like $10. It just accepted my credit card straight out, which I know some people have struggled with. So you might have to go try another payment method. But for me, I really didn't have to. Downloaded the GeoFront patch. It basically says, the patcher says, point me to the game. You tell it where the game is, it patches it, and then you just play it. Like, it was really quite simple. I figured it out, and if I could figure it out, you can figure it out. And like James and I were talking about earlier, it really is a quality, a lot of attention to detail. They went back to update their work to be in line with NIS America's.
I actually didn't really play over it, but did they fix the aerial bug?
Yes, that was one of the first things they fixed when they worked on the patch.
I was about to say, I don't know what you're talking about. So
basically, if you use the WinArts aerial, the game would just slow down
Single
to like
digits
5
FPS.
APS.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was like one of the very first things they fixed. So yeah.
But yeah,
it's more cinematic frame rate for those spells.
So I guess now I'm in the boat where I have to now keep tabs on GeoFront to see like what the status is of Azure. So I'm now kind of in that train.
That should be in the next month or so. Well, that should be in the next month or so. So it's not like you'll have to wait too long.
I mean, there is a patch out there. I mean,
yeah, but the GeoFront version of Azure is coming so soon that I would just wait for that because it's
Yeah,
going to be a
like-
much better translation.
Obviously, I don't know if they have a timetable for that or not. Like, I don't want to put additional pressure on this. Like, it's next month. It could be,
I mean, this is like
relatively
Adam here. I mean, he's like, oh, I'm gonna beat this one route in Saga. Then next thing you know, it's like, oh, there's a remaster coming up.
Well, I was joking that like as soon as I play this game or both games, that's when we'll finally get the official announcement. So once that happens, you can all thank me.
Yeah.
Even though honestly, I had a good enough time with Trails to Zero with this port or with this translation that I can kind of easily recommend it in terms of quality wise. Like I've played a few other fan translations.
I recommend the crossbell games. I just don't recommend where the trails end up.
Yeah, so I'm kind of looking forward. I've kind of got two series that I have gaps in that I'm trying to fill. One of those is Trails. It'll be nice to kind of be on the boat where I'm like, okay, I've played the first 9, and therefore like I haven't like I've done my diligence. I don't have gaps that I'm just ignoring. And another one is Yakuza. I still have Yakuza's 5 and 6 that I'm going to play at some point this year, but I don't know when. Because once I get those out of the way, I will have played 0 through 7. So that's kind of my goal for the year is to try to kind of get these series that I've been interested in a long time, and I've kind of just poked and played random games in them. Kind of actually like get up to speed and kind of have the full breadth of titles under me. But yeah, that was my week. I really enjoyed it. I kind of blitzed through it in a single week. So I must have enjoyed it a lot. It's top 3. I'll have to ruminate on it a bit to see like.
Well, I think they're
Did
just
I
a lot
enjoy it?
shorter. You know,
It
Like,
is a bit shorter, yeah.
like you play the newer Trails game. It's like what Cold Steel Free is like 120 to 150 hours to beat. I know some people say I'm exaggerating, but
Hey, man, at one point, Persona used to be shorter games. Then look where we are now.
yeah,
Well, I think the turbo and the no. So how do I word this? There's a spot in the launcher for this version of the game where it's like if you have the Evo, the Vita re-release version, I believe, voice files, you can drop them here and get the full voice acting. And I kind of looked around for that a little bit. And I was kind of like, you know what? I don't really need that because I can kind of like read faster than they can talk, that whole conundrum. So the fact that I could turbo through like these very slow panning shots and like constantly just read the dialogue at a pretty brisk pace
it's
is
kind of
kind of what
worth
kept
it. You know, Randy's voice is really good in Japanese. I can highly recommend that one.
But it
I
really does extend the playtime though. It's like I'm with Brian here. Like if I can read faster than what you're saying, then I'm usually gonna skip what you're saying, no matter how good the voice acting is.
It depends it depends. Sometimes I go into a game and I like want to linger on every last word, but I guess for this game since I didn't play it with voice acting, it's a moot point. There was no option, but
Like I think one of the biggest pet peeves in Azure was 2 of the voices are really quiet. So I heard GeoFont supposed to fix that. Like every time when Randy talks in the Azure version or when Yin talks, they're like super quiet. Like you couldn't hear them at all. It's like somebody,
they didn't do the voice balancing right. That's interesting.
yeah. It's like you couldn't hear them unless you turn the volume off. Or like not like turn the volume off, like turn the music off.
But yeah, so I'm not that obviously. I started this whole journey, and I'm wrapping up here. Don't worry. By downloading Cold Steel 4 and then being like, you know what, I'll put this off for a bit. So I am okay putting that off until I can play through Azure because I kind of want to give that game for some reason its best possible chance. I don't want to just go in and say like, well, that didn't make sense to me. It stinks or whatever. I want to at least substantiate myself and say I know everything that's going on, and then it maybe stinks. We'll see what I actually think.
We'll see because remember I've played both crossbows before I played CS4.
Well, yeah, I just want to make sure that I have good footing. But yeah, Trails from Azure, it's pretty good.
I'm getting jealous of you and James. You're going through your Trails and Yakuza series. James is going through his Final Fantasy. I'm like, I kind of want to go through a series I haven't played through yet. I don't know what.
Dragon Quest.
You've already played everything.
I played a lot of Dragon Quest. I've been an avid Dragon Quest follower, so it can't be that. I don't know. I was
Elder
like,
Scrolls. Play through Elder Scrolls Arena, which is like pretty hard to go back to.
Series.
I don't know, man. I still have this Steam version of Blue Reflection still installed for some reason. So maybe now that it's turning into a series with like an anime and a sequel and a mobile game, I was like, maybe I should be that person that just for some reason.
Oh yeah, I actually did play Blue Reflection.
So there you go. Caligula
Dutch,
also.
you should just take it away. What have you been playing this week?
What I can let's see. I can't talk about the main thing I've been playing, so maybe next we can talk about that. There was this one night, I don't know, I was feeling bored, and I downloaded this Apple Arcade version of Oregon Trail and streamed it to some friends.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so I played some Oregon Trail. That's like the newest version, which is actually has like visuals and models, which is for me. I think of Oregon Trail as like a text adventure. That's, I guess, showing my age a little, but that's how I primarily played Oregon Trail, and a little bit of what was available on Windows 95, which was okay.
I remember that game when I was a kid, like going to like elementary school or something.
Raise your
like
hand
that.
if you expected our RPG podcast to ever talk about Oregon Trail.
Yeah, it's a really depressing game. You just go out and usually die from like starvation.
Okay, like I have a terrible Oregon Trail player because I always have the settings to grueling pace and fulfilling like the food, like the max food and whatnot, so it goes as fast as possible. But obviously, people get more injured as you put it to grueling pace. So like, one of my party members is just struggling. Oh, like within 2 days of the journey, he got a broken leg, and then like in another part of it, my hunter who came back from a hunt, I guess their rifle was quote unquote accidentally pointing at him and it accidentally discharged on his arm. So he
Jesus.
he has like a bullet hole in his arm, now a broken leg, and then like after as he was about to like recover from both of them, he got another broken leg. So it's been kind of weird. I think the weird part about this version of Oregon Trail is it has like the Resident Evil 4 briefcase inventory Tetris management in it. So like you can carry all these supplies with you on your wagon, but you have to like rotate them on your wagon to like make them fit. So I like put like this box of ammo sideways, like goes that'll fit that way and whatnot. And then throughout the journey, your wagon will get beat up, so there will be like parts of that
Spaces
grid
you can't use.
there'll be like it'll be damaged or exposed. So you have to like have like some repair tools on you to like fill it, like repair that so it's usable again on that grid. And then there's also this part of this Oregon Trail version where you can like there's like stats on your people, so they can have like a constitution stat or like a religious stat and whatnot. You can like say have like this like Bible on you, and like you can use that as a person to like make them more religious, I think. And I'm not really sure what that does. I know that like there's like a hunting stat, like a sharpshooter stat that like
that's
obvious what it does.
Game is still there.
Oh yeah, like the hunting mini game is you can walk very slowly in 8 directions and you can shoot in that direction, but it's not like anything complicated. It's like, hey, there's animals still running and you still shoot them with a rifle. Bigger ones like ox or buffalo, you can take like 2 shots and whatnot. And then
there's a bear. Is there a bear in there?
Maybe later on in the journey.
Final boss. Right before you get to Oregon, there's just a bear in the way.
Yeah. But it's all it's weird because it's not like a straight shot to Oregon. Obviously, you always have these landmark locations. Right. So like the first stop is like Fort Kearney, but then you have like your choose your own route to get there. So like you have like these 3 branches, and like you choose a branch, and if you've like seen that part already, it'll like show, hey, there's a camping spot, or this is a place where you'll stumble upon an event. Like say there's like a broken wagon that you choose to go there and investigate it and whatnot. And it's so stupid because sometimes like you send a person out to like say investigate something, and then they'll come back to the wagon. They're like, oh, they slipped and fell on a rock. They broke their leg. It's like, wait, what? So it's I don't know. I played Oregon Trail for a night, and I'll probably continue with it here and there. It's also kind of sad too. Well, obviously the whole event is sad, but like the tutorial is really weird because they're showing you these systems, and I don't know if it's like random. It doesn't. I don't think it's random. But like the tutorial person for me was a Native American, and like it ends with him getting cholera, and like on like your first like kind of main hub before you go on your journey, and then you just kind of check up on this Native American tutorial person, and it's like, yeah, I don't have many days left since I got cholera, but good luck on your journey. I'm like, all right, dude, I guess.
Dog.
It is. I'm like, what the fuck? So other than that,
I can't wait to put Oregon Trail on the timestamps for this podcast.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
have you seen those? Was it those mini computer with organ trails in like Walmart? You ever seen those?
I don't think I've seen those. Like I said, I've only played the text adventure Oregon Trail, like one of the originals, and the whatever was on Windows 95, which is like a more primitive visual version. I don't know how many.
This is dating me, but I remember like second grade computer lab. It was a little bit outdated at the time, admittedly. So don't detect me that much. But we had the big like 9-inch floppies that were like a stack of them, and that was the Oregon Trail game. That's what if you wanted to play that in computer lab, that's what you had. You had this big ass floppies.
I'm sure there's many versions of Oregon Trail, and I don't know any. So it's kind of a weird generational thing of like I got text Windows 95, and then fast forward how many years, it's like I have this newest version of Oregon Trail, I guess.
How many kids on their little hand-me-down iPhones are going to ask for Apple Arcade subscription to play Oregon Trail 2021?
I'll do it.
There you go. Yeah, I only because I want to make the most out of my my 3 months of Apple Arcade, so I just downloaded all these games that don't really have time to get to. I was like one of the ones that I was like, I don't know, I'll give this a shot because me and Brian have finished part 1 of Fantasian, so now we're here just twiddling our thumbs waiting for the second part, and I'm excited for the second part. Like it seems very promising where it's going, but I'm just hoping that I don't forget how to play when it comes back to whenever that comes out. But I don't know, like it's kind of a weird thing. Like I'm not gonna spoil how that first part ends, but there are like systems that are like introduced to you like way later than you'd expect, and then shortly after you're exposed to, like this 1 or 2 new systems, like it's like, okay, end of part 1. I'm like, but you just
like
maybe part 1 is just a tutorial.
Yeah, a major gameplay component is introduced like 3 hours, not even 3 hours, 2 hours, 90 minutes before you get the little intermission like statement. It says please return in part 2. It's like, oh, that's weird. And then without spoiling anything, there is a little text box that gives a suggestion about how part 2 will be different from part 1 in some ways. So I was like, okay. Like, so not only did you kind of introduce this new idea right at the like midnight hour, but you're also telling me that the second part is going to play slightly differently. So it's kind of interesting where it's like, I really liked what I played of part 1. And I guess to succinctly sum it up, when I first got that message that said like end of part 1, my gut response was, oh man. So I must have enjoyed what I played if that was like, it wasn't finally it's over.
Well, I have a question for you guys. If you got this new system, can you go back and level up and try to take advantage of this new system before part 2 comes out?
So in part 1, this kind of answers your question. Like the point of no return, you don't have access to the full map or your full party. You kind of have a limited area that you can kind of explore. So it's not like it's like, okay, I'm going to just dart around the map and train up everyone that's been introduced and do everything before part 2. You really can't.
Yeah.
You might be able to if you had like a save in a very particular location, like maybe 70% of the way through part 1. But in the last like quarter of part 1, you really don't have that option. So you can kind of like imagine you're playing Final Fantasy X and like you're stuck in a certain like cloistered trial,
or it'd be like
you're stuck in here until part 2 or whatever. Just
like Final Fantasy VII,
kind of a weird spot.
Yeah, it's kind of okay. So it's kind of weird because I think the level cap in the part 1 is 35, so you can't like go grind to the level 99. But I haven't actually tested it yet. But I wonder if you can just like grind your item cap to like 99. Like say like if you can get like 99 heal stones in time for like part 2 if you wanted to or something. So I guess that'd be a way. And then I guess if you were committed enough, you can like grind items, then sell them. I think you still have. I wonder if you still have access to a vendor. I don't know if you
I think you do. I think you do at the last place. There's like I
was just thinking about something like from Final Fantasy VII. Do you remember there was this video back a long time ago where this one guy decided to grind to level 99 in the bombing mission?
I don't know that particular video, but I'm not surprised that someone's done that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that you guys are doing the same thing with Fantasia.
Well, they're smart and they cap it. They like hard cap where you can't go any higher. But you can only like, so you only have a limited slate of party members, less than half of what you have throughout the game. And I got all those up to the part 1 level cap. I'm like, all right, that's really all the planning I can really do,
Again,
except for what Josh said.
maybe that's what I'll do before, like, once I finally get a date or something, or on part 2, or like at least, and then maybe try to like to remind myself how to play the game. That's when I'd like try to do the level cap stuff, because you can still go and like do like the Mengen stuff, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's yeah, that's all we can really say at this point. It's a tough game to talk about now.
Well, yeah, we kind of talked about it at length last podcast, so I don't want to like re-step over the same discussion points, but it was kind of just like late. Like when I was thinking of playing Fantasian earlier this year, I was expecting it to just be like a full release, because that's kind of like how they marketed it as. And then late in the game, they're like, by the way, it's 2 halves. So, all right then.
Yeah, then I have doomed both of us to waiting at this state, while everyone else who are smarter than us will just get the full thing.
Mm-hmm. And I don't have the free 3 months, but I get like the trial 1 month. So maybe, and unlike you played on the Apple TV. I just played on my iPhone, and I actually had like a decent time with it. Probably the most time I put into a single game on my phone, for whatever that's worth. But it was really nice. Just put in a few hours before bed, just grinding away or doing whatever.
Now go download Oregon Show and play with me.
Yeah,
Isn't it nice to, even though you're obviously wasting, it's kind of a shame to have something like that split into 2 parts. In my mind, it's always nice to have something to look forward to, like on the back burner, like I can't think of a good example. Well, okay, like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. It's maybe years off, who knows how long it's going to be, but like it's kind of exciting that eventually it's going to be here. I don't know if that's like
it's kind of like the summer break between 2 seasons of a show or something, I guess.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Maybe there's a middle ground between, like, I feel like the whole episodic thing has kind of gone. It's no longer vogue. It kind of exists in the style of service game patch updates now. So this is kind of like a weird middle ground where it's just like 2 big discrete parts.
I think it works better for me, like in some like genre games, like Hitman, for example, of them that got like an episodic release instead of everything at once. I thought that worked really well for the structure of that game, because it allowed.
But then they went back against it.
Yeah, and I think that's the bummer part for me, is like when they started to do full releases again, which a lot of people like too. But for me, like it kind of forced everyone to like become more intricate and more intimate with this like map, because that's the only thing available right now. So like everyone got to like explore together at the same pace.
Yeah, I can see that.
About this map.
It's kind of like. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
Yeah, because like while in RPGs, like I prefer to just like have everything available in one go. Like even though I kind of get what Final Fantasy VII Remake is going for, and how like it ended up the way it did, especially the way it concluded. Like it sure, in retrospect, it may have been the right decision to split it up, but for me, it's like I kind of just wanted the whole thing in one go, because that's how I consume RPGs, how I consume games. Like I usually just play them in one big spurts, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, I did too, considering how I played through Trails from Zero.
Yeah, and like imagine Trails from Zero, you had to like you played.
Well, now that I think about it, it does kind of have that big split right in the middle, huh? They just call it 2 games.
Really makes you think.
Big brain, but I did also order, like, there's this attachment for iPhones called Backbone. It's basically just like a grip controller for it. And I ordered one and I got it, but I've already finished Fantasian. So now I'm kind of like, guys, what else can I use this for? I guess other Apple Arcade games. Maybe I should look into GeForce Now. I think xCloud is in beta on iPhone. So now I got to think of like other ways.
You have to justify your purchase now.
Yes,
that thing has Trails of Cold Steel 4? I mean, or free? I'm just seeing a lot of streaming service as it.
There you go. You can use it for Trails of Cold Steel 3 and 4 on Stadia. There you go.
There I go. Does Stadia have an iPhone app? I know nothing about Stadia.
I think it's like you have to go access it through browser. I think that was the workaround they did for. I don't know if they ever made good on each other after the whole debacle.
This is kind of still. Oh, go ahead, James.
Isn't there like a workaround for like xCloud streaming now or something?
Probably.
These are the things I have to learn.
Yep, you have to know for science and report back.
This isn't as big a deal, but I did mess a little bit with the Discord from mobile streaming. I was streaming Fantasian through Discord to Adam here, And he actually said it like ended up looking okay. So I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Not as useful, but just kind of fun. So I guess with that stated, we got to go on to now I pick it from my hat. How about Chow? You don't have anything listed here, but is there anything that you've been playing? Now you're obligated to come up with something. What have you been doing this week?
I've been playing SaGa Frontier.
Oh, okay. I want
But
to hear about SaGa Frontier
me and
Remastered.
Adam are playing the same game technically. So are we in like a 2-in-1 package?
Yes. Well,
Two
you
in
guys go
one
first.
pack. I like that.
Well, how should I start with SaGa Frontier? I always like to call it the best kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's Kusoge. It's fucking god tier for me, but it's like
You're
a
gonna need
Kusoge
to
because
you're
it's
gonna
so
need to,
broke.
you're gonna need to define that for us normals.
Kusoge is a term for Japanese game for trash game. That's what they call it.
It's literally it's a shit game. Kuso shit game.
Right?
Game just like a abbreviation for game.
But it's like a god tier game to me, right? It's so unbalanced, it's so broken, but yet it's so fun. It's like the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 of RPGs. You
Yeah,
know, it's
Kusuge isn't meant to be like on like when people say Kusuge, that doesn't necessarily mean that like it's not fun. Like like to me when I hear Kusuge, it's like it might be like a jank or like maybe oddly designed game, maybe considered bad, but like it's endearing.
but
Japan janked. As
yeah,
opposed
it's
to
very jank,
Canada
but
jank or
it's
Euro jank.
amazing. That's kind of how I see it, right? I mean, you get like stories from certain characters that their stories progress by waiting for assassination attempts, from one of the character roots, right? It's like it's very, very obtuse, right?
That's a specific example, but it's actually kind of like how are the different ways that a video game will allow us to tell a story? Like that's why can't waiting to be assassinated be a plot driver like progression to actually push the narrative? I actually kind of like that. It's thinking outside the box.
Or like one of the character has absolutely no story, and you're just like, okay, well, what should I do in this whole game then? Oh, well, maybe I just wander around, do whatever, right?
So you have played SaGa Frontier before, right? And you're
I
revisiting with the
have.
remaster?
So I was able to blitz through this game in pretty fast. Like I beat the Acellus route in day one in like basically 5 hours. Was it? Then a lot of the other routes I kind of beat in New Game Plus because in New Game Plus is a new feature in the remaster because I knew it's like, well, I never able to beat Lute's route before in the original because I just find his route was really boring because you're just wandering around or you decide to go to the last boss's location, which is right at the start of the game. It's like, oh yeah, he has absolutely no story. This guy just could go right to the last boss right now.
I think that
So
like that's a big part of like this remaster too. Is like it's like it's kind of understated when like it's on a features list, but New Game Plus really transforms this game because think about back in the original on PS1, where like every time you start a new route, you had nothing. You had to always start from square one again on SaGa Frontier, and that's really like it really drains you, especially with like all these different routes, like up to like
Yeah, and it does drain you because sometimes you'll be like, oh yeah, it's really hard to like spark or glimmer certain skills. You'll be like, oh yeah, I finally learned was it blood sprinkler or life of spray now, whatever, right? And you'll be like, oh yeah, if I start a new file, will I get the chance to glimmer the skill again? It'll be like,
yeah, you have to relearn everything again. Like everything feels temporary in the original. While in the remaster, it's like, okay, I glimmered the skill and it's like it's with me forever now. I don't have to worry about it ever again because I can just transfer it over. And like to people who don't haven't played SaGa, like glimmering is like when you use a skill, there's a chance to learn a new skill after you use that skill. And then that's how you basically learn new skills is by there's a chance that you learn it after using a skill.
but
you just said
yeah,
skill like 4 times. As Nico said.
I don't get it.
But everything you said was true. Basically, if you want a character to be better, this is my understanding of the game, having only played Saga Scarlet Grace. But if you want a character to get better at, say, bows, you just have them keep using bows and using bow skills, and they'll slowly start learning stronger skills. And every time they do, randomly, it's called glimmer or more.
yeah,
It seems like fans
basically it.
prefer the term sparking, but yeah.
Yeah, because that's what the fan translation fandom used to call it. Because they
From
had
way back
no
when.
terms, right? They had no terms back then. It would be like, oh yeah, just see like a light bulb in that dude, and they just call it sparking back then, right? There was no official terms for anything. The manuals don't really provide like good enough instructions for anything.
So Adam, you've also been playing Saga Frontier Remastered, correct?
Yep, I finished it completely. Did everything you could possibly do.
Uh,
How
so
much time did that take? What's your hour count?
Let's see. 1 second.
Okay, what was your hour count, Chow?
What's my hour count? Well, the problem is really actually
62.
well, the truth is, it's really hard to put the hour count because if you leave it in the Switch sleep mode, it counts as playtime.
Oh shit, it's one of those games.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, apparently that's still a thing in this age, right?
Okay, well,
I hate
what's still
those.
your hour count? though? There's
Well,
it's like
I can tell you, I
73
can tell you a
hours.
certain
300.
thing. I know that I beat Acellus route in 6 hours, but the problem I left the Switch on that day, so it added like 27 hours there. So, but my end playtime was like 42 hours from clearing 6 different routes. I just haven't done one route, which is Riki's route. I really despise Riki's route in every single version, and I still despise his route because I hate using
Why is
monsters.
that?
Riki's route is that you play as Riki, who is a monster, and in monsters they work like, oh yeah, you need to find 4 skills by killing certain monsters, and if those 4 skills match his set, he'll transform into a different form, and it's very experimental. You don't know what does what without like a guide, or if you just want to trial and error all day. It's like, let's just say you got the 4 gazes skill, you get the ultimate monster. But how would you know that? Would you try and collect every single gaze skill? And some of them, could be locked to lower monster ranks. So once you get through a certain part, you'll never be able to fight like those really weak monsters to get those certain skills, right?
And you can like it feels like you can like permanently screw up Ricky too if you do the wrong thing.
Yeah,
sometimes.
but like now there's New Game Plus. Now you don't have to worry
Yeah.
about the low battle rank, and you can fight the weaker monsters. You could be like, oh yeah, I'll just start a new game and fight those weaker monsters to get those skills,
Well,
right?
and yeah, and one of the there's a weird thing to say, but one of the bigger like additions to this game is like you actually have like a scenario log with you, and it'll actually tell you. Like,
Well, the
go
biggest
here.
addition to this game is Acellus route because a lot of her content was cut.
Oh
in
yeah,
the original.
I mean quality of life wise, but in terms of,
Quality
like,
of life wise, you just fast forward. You could set it to 3 times battle speed, but the game defaults to 2 at most. You had to go to the option setting and want to go 3 times.
Every JRPG needs turbo mode now.
Yeah, there's no 2 times. I mean, there's no 3 times on default. You're not allowed to set it unless you go to option to switch it to 3 times before it lets you do it for some reason.
yeah, so you have the fast forwarding. You actually have like now a thing that tells you, hey,
The stats.
you need to do this and do this next. And like what you were getting at earlier is like the development of this game originally back in the day was like it was very rough and had to be rushed to like release. So a lot of things got cut in the
Well, the
process.
thing is, Josh, there's a lot of things that doesn't explain to you in SaGa Frontier back then. Like if you find a piece of equipment, it'll just say 20 defense, but you don't know what it does.
Yep.
It like you buy like in the beginning in the Acellus route, there's a giant kraken, and you have no idea how to kill it because it probably in one shot you, right? So what you need to do is find this armor, and this armor will resist water attacks, but the game doesn't say it resists water attacks on the original, right? So in the new one, it will be like in this new remaster, there'll be a description in armor that says it will resist water attacks. So now you know what you can use that armor for.
That's always the weird thing about like when you think about I guess in parallel of like how SaGa and Monster Hunter have gone, it's like their later iterations now, like with the re-release of SaGa, it's like here's a new feature. We actually tell you how to play the game. It's like cool, thank you. Finally.
But like quality of life features, they finally explain all the stats. Like there's also like the mystics, like their weapons could absorb monsters, and you could use that bonus to boost them because when you're using mystics, right, they have no stat gains when they level up. They only gain HP.
Oh yeah.
Was it WP and JP? So when you fight monster, you need to absorb them with your mystic equipment to get stats. And in the original game, it doesn't tell you what that exact monster stats now you have an actual like little grid in the side that tells you what that monster's bonus are. The only problem is if you play New Game Plus, you get the ability transferred, but you don't get the bonus for some reason.
You don't get the stats?
Yeah, you don't get the stat bonus for some reason.
Weird.
So you have to find and absorb those monsters again.
Well, they had to make it difficult in one way or the other. Come on.
Like I absorbed some dragons in my playthrough and got like 30 extra stats for Acellus and stuff, but you'll be like, then I tried it again. It's like I don't get this bonus.
I don't want to make it too easy.
Yeah.
Come on, we have New Game Plus. You could steal the ultimate sword in the beginning of the dungeon in this one place, right? Come on.
Okay, so like talking about like the quality of life and like the minute stuff, like relatively speaking, in SaGa Frontier. But let's move on to like the big stuff. Like obviously, a lot of the additions that they brought back that were originally cut was a lot of events from Acelus's route and the new Fuse route. Like, talk to me briefly about what they added in Acelus's route. Like, obviously try to dodge around spoilers if there's anything that can be spoiled. Really, these are
Okay,
pretty simple
well,
stories, and also like they added a brand new playable character in this game. Just that's pretty interesting to think about as well. So tell me about those.
So Asalis' what new content was how she can leave the first area, because in the original game you only have one method to leave. This is to talk to a pilot and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, I can get you out here," and that was the original game, right? One of the cut content was there's another method to get out. Um, I think what they said was the original method to get out was that you had to jump in the incinerator, get burned to death, even though they didn't die because they're mystics, right?
Hmm.
So that was the
I'll take your word for it.
that's basically the method to get out, how they intended to. But now they made it like, oh yeah, they give you 3 different ways to get out. And there's also a third method to get out, which is you find these people that work for Trinity. Trinity is like this crime syndicate sort of thing, or this really big corporation, and these guys will like, okay, I can help you smuggle out here, and there's a little small area you can navigate if you choose that third method. That's one of the new contents for Celis' route. The next one is all this other cut content that they never had in the original, which is you could get Dr. Nukusan to join you. He's this mystic
Interesting.
doctor that
Mhm.
does all this creepy stuff in this back alley in Kuong. And you could get him to join the Celsius route now. This is new. The problem is that all these characters kind of join near the end of her game. It's like, I guess during development they didn't want to shoehorn in the middle of the game because they'd probably feel like, oh yeah, if we implement all this new feature in the middle of the game, it might screw us up. So they probably just decide, oh yeah, we're just gonna add all this new content.
Does
near
it
the end.
feel like feel too bolted on, or does it like make Acelus's route better, relatively speaking?
I wouldn't say added. I wouldn't say it's better. It feels a little shoehorned because it just kind of implemented not very well, I think, in my opinion, because it doesn't like implement it within the story. It feels like you can completely miss all this new content, like completely, right?
Right.
Like the first time
So
I beat it,
it feels kind of like tacked on the end.
yeah,
Well, I say that, but you did talk about how at the beginning they went with this idea, based on the way you described it, of more breadth than depth, where it's just like it's the same story beat of trying to escape, but we're going to give you different options. We're gonna go horizontally, not vertically. There, but then you're saying near the end they start adding a bunch of characters and stuff that feels maybe less good.
yeah. Like the problem is just like how it's implemented. Like it's implemented in the post game, so you can like completely miss it. Like the first time I beat the game, I completely missed it. I'm like,
Mm.
it's like, hey, wasn't there new content? It's like, so I had to go
Square
back.
Enix marketing told me there was new stuff.
So
Where
I had
was
to
it?
go back and do it. It's like, oh shit! It's like I completely missed it the first time, right? So it's like you can completely miss all this new
Oh
content,
wow. Yeah, I would probably miss it too. Then if you missed it.
right? So it's like it's kind of dumb. It's like you go to the bio lab. It's like you just couldn't get the treasure chest, but now it's like in the post game. Now the story's finally there, right? So now you're like, it's too easy to miss.
Adam, tell me about Fuse's route. I want you to speak up about like the way Fuse's route is implemented is unique to the other routes because it feels like it's one of those things that you gradually unlock more of the more you play, I believe.
So basically, I'm not even sure if we established this properly at the top here, but SaGa Frontier, at the start of the game, you pick between 7 characters, and each character has its own story. And they're all in the same world, but they kind of start at different spots. Their story goes in different directions. The characters you can recruit are not always the same from character to character, because it kind of just depends on who's around and who's available, right? And the storylines are different. Their final bosses are different. So it's basically like 7 individual stories in the same world with a little bit of overlap here and there. There is no like true ending. There is no like everyone teams up and fights the actual final boss at any point. Nothing like that. So apparently Fuse was originally meant to be one of the characters, but was never implemented. So they decided to implement him as a character, although it's not quite the same as what his original intent was going to be. So Fuse works a little bit differently than the rest. Instead of having his own like unique storyline, kind of like the other 7 characters, what Fuse is basically a alternate version of each of the 7 other characters. So in a sense, it's almost like 7 more routes rather than just one more route. When you pick Fuse as your character, the game will actually randomly select one of the other 7 characters, provided that you beat their route already, and basically do their route again, only it's like fused up this time. It's like now it's, Fuse is along for the ride and it's changed in ways. It kind of, they follow kind of the same story beats, but it's just kind of like a what if Fuse is here and messed everything up sort of deal. And it even ends with like the same kind of final boss. Like for example,
like a remix, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. For example, in Ricky's route, Ricky is collecting these rings. And so Ricky's route, what his route involves, and you were talking earlier about how each character's kind of like story progression is a little bit different. Ricky's route, he's collecting these rings, and you can collect most of them in any order. So it's basically like a bunch of quests that you do. For example, you stop a possession of a girl who's being like possessed by a ghost, and you get a ring there. There's another ring you get by what is it? Early on in the storyline, you are basically stopping like a crime syndicate in the city of Scrap, and you get a ring there, and so on. And there's like 8 of them. What Fuse's route is, it's actually kind of amusing, is that Fuse like accidentally stumbles across all these rings and starts collecting them. And you actually have like Ricky in the background. Like you see these little clips of them trying to get the rings, but they're always just like one step behind. It's like, where are all these rings going? We're missing them all, because they don't realize that Fuse is getting them before they can. So it's kind of like this amusing thing, like they're always one step behind. And then eventually it sort of comes to an end where like they meet, and then it sort of like follows the Ricky story route ending after that in a way, only Fuse is there. But that's kind of the idea, is that it's sort of like the same route, only mixed with Fuse in there. And Fuse is a fun character because he's sort of like this. His name is actually not Fuse. That's a nickname. He's kind of like a hothead, and that's why he's called Fuse. And he's kind of like, he's not necessarily like a bad person, but he just kind of gets upset and aggravated and frustrated really quickly. And he's sort of hence his name and his hothead personality. But he's kind of like endearing in a way.
And his kind of background is like he's an investigator. So like like when you do his route, like you like these. So like how it chooses, like in the context of the stories, like you had like these case files.
Yeah, that's the context of his stories. Like he has these case files. It's like, this case file has something to do with these rings, and he doesn't know what they're about, but he starts like investigating. So he starts collecting the rings, and that's actually Ricky's case. And then there's this case file about this missing girl who was ran over by a carriage and disappeared, and that's a Celis. So you start a Celis' route only with Fuse, and so on. So really, to complete the game fully, really you basically do 7 character routes and then 7 Fuse routes. With New Game Plus, these second routes you can do them pretty darn quickly if all your characters are like all powered up from your earlier playthroughs and you're just kind of going through the story and mainlining it. You can beat some of these routes in like sometimes an hour, but sometimes even like just 20 minutes. They can be pretty short.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing this route without New Game Plus, because it'll be just like, oh yeah, there's this little story in the prologue and last boss.
So I guess my one question is, when it comes to Fuse's route, is since it does it randomly, is there like a weird frustrating cases where, like, say I have like 5 character routes done and I want to do Fuse's route, will it actually cycle through them uniquely? So like if I do three of Fuse's routes out of the 5, will it ever choose those 3 I chose again, or will it actually lean towards more of the ones that it hasn't done yet?
You don't have to worry. I don't know why it made it random rather than you can just select it. But like, for example, I did the red version, or I should say the Fuse red route first. And then that route, from what I can tell, will never show up again once you've completed it as you go for the other Fuse routes. So like it'll now randomly select between the ones you haven't done yet.
Okay, so it won't like have reselect it and then you have
Yeah, it's not like you won't be in a situation where it's like I want to do the Fuse Amelia route, but it keeps giving me the other ones, that I've already done. Like it won't do that.
Okay.
The weird thing is, and this is just like a footnote, but I don't know why they did it this way, is once you beat all the Fuse routes, and if you want to play another one, like you pick Fuse again, then you can select which one you want to replay. Like why couldn't you just do this at the beginning? I don't understand. Sure, whatever. Like
What a
I
weird
don't know why you
saga
did it this way.
It's
One
you-
comment I have about this kind of in general, you're talking about like Saga games not being explained too well is kind of it's almost one of their characteristics. A lot of that actually stems from Akitoshi Kawazu. He first got into these sort of games. Him and other people of his like generation are basically like Westaboos playing stuff like Wizardry and Dungeons and Dragons.
Mhm.
When these guys were skipping college to play these
Westaboos.
games. Yeah, no, seriously, that's what they were. They were skipping college to play these sorts of games. And I believe Kawazu even said in an interview, like trying to play Dungeons and Dragons without understanding English. Like they can't read the rule book. So how does this work? And they just sort of kind of figure it out. And it kind of apparently this sort of Saga discovered on your own sort of deal that kind of stems from that philosophy.
Mhm.
I mean, whether or not that's good or not, I think it's actually kind of interesting, but
That is pretty cool.
that is sort of just like, hey, sometimes you just have to try things and figure it out. And sometimes you might mess up, but that's okay. Just try it again and eventually it'll
Isn't that
click.
the same thing with the Soul series too, where Miyazaki is basically saying that he has these English books that he couldn't read and just kind of make the
He
story
might have,
kind of
yeah.
vague.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
Just kind of like pretend, like kind of imagine the story in your head instead and try to piece it together based on visuals and things like that. And so maybe.
So I'm interested, Adam, since you've been ever since Scarlet Grace, you've been going through older Saga games. After that, you've been through Romantic Saga 2, Romantic Saga 3, now SaGa Frontier. How do you feel? Where does SaGa Frontier rank in your Saga catalog now?
So I like Romancing Saga 3 quite a lot. Saga Scarlet Grace has the best combat system out of any of the Saga games I've played. It's honestly one of the best turn-based combat systems that's ever existed, to be honest. So it's a pretty high bar. Romancing Saga 3, I think, had a really good balance of exploration, going anywhere, just doing what you want, discover it on your own. And it avoided, like, for example, nothing in Romancing Saga 3 is like missable. So you don't have to worry about if I explore in this direction, but not in this direction, am I going to miss out on anything? There's no FOMO. You always know you can loop around and return to it. And that's kind of just a nice thing to know when you're playing it, is that
it's like
everything
peace of
is
mind.
Yeah, like you're never gonna like, oh, you picked the wrong route and now you're never gonna ever get this thing. Or
Wow.
whatever. That's not the
This-
case. But
I'm just gonna say this is wow, because it's like this is gonna be a bad thing for SaGa Frontier too when Adam starts it, because every time it's like you do this one place, it's always like a one-time explore area. Once you miss it, it's gone.
Well, the thing with SaGa Frontier is I like it a lot, and it shares, of course, a lot of the same DNA. There are moments in it though that are kind of awkwardly constrained and a little bit frustrating. For example, early on in Red's route, you are on the airship, and the airship gets attacked by a bunch of monsters. And it's pretty early on in his route, and it's actually kind of tough. And at that point, you don't have that many characters on your team. And if you didn't explore earlier and like gain a couple of stats for Red, you can enter that section of the game underpowered and with like really low HP, where monsters might be able to just one-shot you and game over. And there are ways around it, and you can recruit a few people on the airship to help yourself. But it's just kind of this weirdly like frustrating part of this game that you can't in like, for example, in Romancing Saga 3, if you ever go to an area and you're like, wow, this area is kind of tough, you can always leave and do something else and then come back. So you never felt like I am stuck here. Where in Romancing Saga or in SaGa Frontier, there are moments where it's like, all right, I am now within this sort of storyline, what's the word?
Bubble, maybe.
Interactive moment that I have to complete this moment first before it lets me like back out onto the world. And so there are a few moments like that where it's like, all right, now I got to get over this barrier or this hump, and maybe I entered in a poor state that you have to get through it before.
SaGa Frontier is
Yeah.
its own WeGraph moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that. But I still really like the game, honestly, quite a lot. And I feel like with some time separated from it, I've actually kind of appreciated it more since I've beaten it. But there are just some moments like that where it's like, this is admittedly a little bit frustrating.
Well, to be honest
One
with
other
you,
thing
I was
that-
actually
one other
stuck there
thing-
too.
Sorry?
I was actually stuck in the pirate ship too. I felt like with all my new game plus equipment, I didn't have to worry. But these monsters were still one-shotting me because there was like 4 people ganging up on one person.
Yeah. We were talking about quality of life before. There's actually one element that I'm having a hard time reconciling how you would play the original version of this. In the original version of SaGa Frontier, you cannot flee battles. And there are moments in the game. So the game does not. I don't think any SaGa game has random encounters. Maybe the original ones on Game Boy. I played them. I don't actually remember. But there are some places in this game where there's like a high density of enemies in a crowded area. And so you can run into, sometimes there's actually even moments where the game is kind of being an asshole. And it's like, there's 10 enemies here and you kind of got to get through them all. And in the remaster, you can literally just flee from all of them. And if you actually run into an enemy, it's just like, whoops, I don't want to fight you, and just flee and run away. Where in the original version, I never played the original version like Chow did, but you couldn't flee. And I'm just sort of imagining like you had to fight all these battles. That sounds kind of tedious. Because there are definitely moments in the game where there's just like funneling enemies at you, and that's annoyed me in other classic games like Tales of Destiny and for
the original SaGa Frontier is rough in comparison, man. You should.
And some of the Romancing Saga 2 is similar, but even Romancing Saga 2, you could flee. It affected your battle rank, but you could flee. But it's like you can't even flee. I'm just trying to reconcile. Like, you had to fight them all in the original version. You couldn't flee. You had to, spend your WP and hopefully didn't lose too much LP. And it's certainly a quality of life addition that I abuse the heck out of. For example, in Saga games, your HP heals at the beginning of every battle. So functionally, what that means is you do not have to really manage your HP from battle to battle as long as you don't die.
There's no long-term attrition.
Yes, but the long-term attrition where it comes from is from your skill points, which is called WP. And so effectively, you want to get to a boss monster at the end of some dungeon area with some WP in hand so you can use your good skills against them, right? In the original game, I imagine you actually had to balance this a bit. Like, all right, there's a bunch of these fights in the way, and you kind of want to get through them without spending all your WP. But of course, the less you spend, the harder they are. Now, in this game, what I would do, and this is maybe cheap, but it allows me to do it, so I'm going to do it, is just, all right, I want to get to the end of this dungeon. I'm going to flee from every single battle I possibly can, and then get to the boss with my full WP set and just basically use all my strongest skills as many times as I want, because I saved up for the boss, and you can do that now.
Well, haven't we all played a Final Fantasy game or other game where you just build up your limit break meters before getting to the boss?
Right.
Like
it's kind of like that.
I rested at the end in Trails from Zero to get max CP before fighting some of those high chest monsters. It's just strategy.
I actually remember in I think it was Cold Steel 3 on the train. You can take a shower, and that like raises your CP to 100 each time you do, and it's free. And I remember there was like a tough like mini boss monster that you could refight in some of the areas that gave you a lot of experience. And the way that Trails experience works is sort of the more of a gap there is between your experience levels, you can kind of get a really boosted amount. And I would literally like go to the train, take a few showers, go to the boss monster, and spam your limit breaks or whatever, your S crafts, and then go back to the shower, do it again. Just abusing your resource management.
Yeah, I didn't want to go on a complete tangent, but just like we've all like been like, I don't know what you can call it, like just be a bastard and just hoard all of your skill points or overdrives or limit breaks or whatever until the boss, and then you just let them all go.
Wazoo back then was like, no, not for my games.
Nope.
Well,
Yeah,
like,
Chow and I remember back on PS5, we just took that L and just like be like, yeah, we're the dumbasses playing this game.
well, you watch speedrunners playing SaGa Frontier. It's all about how can you dodge these monsters. Method on how to dodge monsters.
Yeah, dude. That was the tech, but that's cool.
But now with this remaster, I wonder how speedrunners are going to play this game. It's like
Dude,
now
it's
you get
gonna be
fleet battles, but
it's gonna be so fast. That's but it sounds so cool now to see this game, But like it just seems like one of the most like, I guess, relatively speaking, ambitious remasters in a sense, because they brought back so much of that deleted content or cut content, along with a lot of quality of life to make it more appealing to today's audience.
Standard.
But not it doesn't sacrifice really what makes a SaGa game a SaGa game, I say.
SaGa Front. I mean, I was going to say SaGa fans keep winning. We got news for more games coming soon eventually.
Yeah, I was gonna say more on that later. So who has been left out? We have James and George. I want to hear from George because I feel like we haven't given him a lot of chance to talk. So
My one's only a short one. I guess it's more of a public service announcement than anything. I can't talk about what I've been playing. Maybe next week. Ooh, tease. But what I have been playing that I can talk about is Disco Elysium even more because I think it must have been 2 days after we did the podcast last week. They fixed it. It's fixed. Like it's not perfect. In the perfect state, there's still one glitch I know about, and it's a visual glitch, and that is it. It's the car. It still looks really smooth for some reason, but when you consider that when it first launched, I didn't even want to get through it. I didn't even want to play it, and now it's just like, this car looks kind of funny. Like, I'm so happy, so happy. Like now I can finally say, and you'll be probably able to read that in the next week or so. It's totally worth it. Perfect, amazing.
So
one of the best games I've played in years.
Voice lines are working right. Interactions working right.
Yep.
The
All
car
in
has
one.
a texture now.
Huh?
Does it?
The car has a texture now. Apparently,
I think
apparently patch 1.05 hit PS5 like earlier today, and people
and
are
that fixed
reporting
it.
that the car has a texture now. Yeah.
The car has a texture. See, no issues now. I can't think. I'm sure there are glitches. I'm sure like every game has glitches. There's no game. I can't think of a single game that has 0 glitches. But like, there's no more progression bugs. There's no more. There wasn't any stuttering when I was playing it. Kim kind of weirdly goes sometimes like at a lower frame rate, so it looks a bit funny. But like when you get into that level where it's like, I was willing to excuse a game when it like barely worked. I was like, no, this is still amazing. Like I'd still recommend it. And now it's like fully playable. And now I can like say it without any guilt. Part of me feels like I should now say I wasn't waiting for the game to be fixed to review it. I wasn't sat there like, no, I must give it like the perfect score. Spoilers, by the way. But it just sort of happened. I was midway through writing it, and then these updates came out. I was like, oh, cool. It'd probably be like a little bit smoother. Maybe it's worth going to check them out. I was like,
the easy way around that is like, in a paragraph, just say like, it had a rocky launch, but thankfully there were like some, like, quick fixes to it that the game is not at like an amazing state that it should have been.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame in some ways that my first playthrough will always be that one where I was like a little bit nervous about stuff crashing, but I don't think I don't think it took away from my experience all that much. Like personally, like I only had one glitch myself.
Well, you were
isn't
glowing
excusing
about it
but
last week.
yeah, that was a fantastic discussion on it. Like, and my thoughts are still exactly the same, if not stronger, because I'm still thinking about it. It's still been 2 weeks since it's launched. I haven't finished my second playthrough yet because I'm doing it on hardcore, and there's a point in the game where you need to pass one skill check, and that is the game saying like, no, go do the side stuff. You can't just, even though I've got like a pretty high level for the one skill it needs. Adam might know what I'm talking about. It's not a spoiler. You just need like a high Shivers rank to get into this building, or to like even think about this building.
Remind me, what does it mean to play Disco Elysium on hardcore?
It basically just makes things like skill checks a lot harder. And usually that's not an issue. Like usually it's like, okay, I failed a skill check. Like where will the game take me next? But there are
because the story
a
keeps
few
going.
examples. Yeah. Like there are a few examples where it's stuff like unless I've missed it, that there is a possibility I've missed it. Where I'm pretty sure in this instance you need to pass this skill check. And the way it works, obviously percentage based. So I could just save it and be like, oh, there's a 4% chance I'm going to get this, but like I'll just keep going until I get it. But I'll just go do the side stuff again. I'll like purposefully be a dick, make it funny. But yeah, like I'm so happy.
And if you had told me a year ago that George would be playing Disco Elysium a second time on hardcore mode in early 2021, I'd be like, nah, not our George.
No, exactly.
Not our George.
They grow up so fast.
It is my favorite game of the year.
But what does having a car texture fix do with the game? Sorry, I never played this series before, so what makes a car texture so important?
It doesn't. It was just like one of the last glaring issues.
Yeah, so the car, it doesn't like really matter, but it comes like an important story moment. You got to like walk past it and see it as a car. You have to see it as something that you need to interact with. And without the texture, it just kind of looks a bit weird and a little bit funny. So, it's more of like I can't think of a good comparison, but it's just fixed now. It looks like a car.
I can think of one. You should all be able to think of one comparison. A certain door.
All right.
Oh my god, no! Not the door.
I'll make it easy for Chow. All right, imagine Chow, you're facing this SaGa Frontier boss, but the boss's face is just neon green, and that's it. There's no features on that boss's face. It's just neon green.
I think actually a better kind of functional example is in Disco Elysium, this car that you see it, you're very obviously when you see it, you're like, I need to interact with that. Like it's clearly a thing that is there deliberately. Whereas if there's no textures there, you might not even realize that it's something you're supposed to touch and interact with. It's just like a background thing, maybe. It's like an adventure game or like a point and click where there's some element like, wait, I didn't realize I could touch this or interact with this because it's not obvious that I can. So I think there actually is like a functional issue there rather than just it looks funny.
As well as that, before they fixed the texture, there was already like issues with that car. That car houses, not only is it like a really cool story moment that's like developed your character and your relationship with Kim, it's also, it has stuff in there that you need, or you don't need it. You don't like need some stuff in the game, but it's like better that you have it. It makes things easier.
Yeah, it's kind of like the body where it's a clear story moment, but I guess technically the game allows you to ignore it if you want to.
I guess the worst repercussion of that is that if you didn't know that it was like Adam's saying, if you didn't know you need to interact with it, you just miss it. So like for personally, like I'd heard about the glitch, I'd heard like where it is and what to look out for, so it was sort of all right for me. And there's a fix to get around like not being able to interact with it before like these most recent patches, but now it's just like it's a non-issue now, according to James. But yeah, go play Disco Elysium.
And with that, we are left with James.
Yep. So I played more of Kingdom Hearts 3 on PC this week. I'm almost done with it. About to start the DLC probably later today because I've been kind of rushing through it. I've been just bum rushing it, skipping all the cutscenes except for Edis Vanitas. Funniest thing in the entire Kingdom Hearts series, that one cutscene.
It's so weird. It's such a good cutscene. I'm not gonna interrupt, but like the power of Kingdom Hearts has kind of compelled me. But like there are some like dopey scenes, but I think Kingdom Hearts 3 has some like really fantastic cutscenes, and it has like I'd say it has some of the funniest moments in the series. Anyway, James, go on. Before I can't be stopped.
But yeah, the PC port is very good. I've definitely played long enough that I can say that technically it's like basically perfect. I haven't had any crashes. I've put like 20 hours into it. Obviously playing it on a really high-end rig. Been running it at 4K, almost max settings. It can stay above 60 FPS at all times at max settings, but like knocking down shadows and SSR a notch along with volumetrics. I can't see the difference, but the frame rate's usually above 100, so definitely worth it. I still need to check it out a little bit, probably in the Pirates world, because that is the most stressful like part of the game
I
for
was just
like
gonna ask you that.
performance.
Yeah.
Gonna check that out on my laptop later because I do intend to write up like an actual PC port review once I'm done. And I need to make sure I have like I test on my laptop just so I can be like, okay, so I've tested on 2 different configurations, that sort of deal. Yeah, it's good. It's been nice going back to 14. I didn't play it on PS4 after the critical update came out, so it's been nice to just be like, okay, I'm going to turn off attractions.
Yes.
So I did that, and I've been boring because one of the the Keyblade you get for the PC version, Elemental Encoder, is kind of OP because it can somewhat randomly just give you a free like high level spell for you to cast.
Oh, sick.
So
Sounds great.
yeah, so it's like I've basically been using the same Keyblade for the entire game because it's like, well, I can just
I don't want to give up the free spell.
Yeah,
That's typical
Ill,
PC
ill.
gamers always cheating and hacking their way through games.
To be fair, James, I will say this: I sound like you. Then that's what you say. The Keyblade that I would recommend is you can't get them anyway until you either find all of the hidden Mickeys or you complete the game on critical. Like the 2 Keyblades there, Oathkeeper and Oblivion, they are the best. Combined with like all the combo changes they made, it is just like it makes a tear come to my eye how good that game is now.
yeah, it's a really, really good game. I've been vastly enjoying my time going through it again. It's a very beautiful game. I will say one thing that's this is definitely a nitpick. It's like first world problem. Some of the texture quality in the game is a bit weird because going from playing something like Monster Hunter World with the HD texture pack, because I've been kind of playing a bit on my new rig to see like how it looks 4K, and then going to Kingdom Hearts 3, it's like there's some textures that look really good, but there's a surprising number of textures in the game that even on the max texture resolution are pretty blurry. I don't know. Yeah, having fun with it. Haven't gotten to Remind yet. I'm excited for it because I didn't play it on PS4, so it's going to be all new to me.
I was actually going to ask, like, have you played all of Kingdom Hearts 3 or just the base game, or what's your history with the series? So I guess I don't think when I think of James, that sounded a bit weird, but whatever. When I think of you, James, I don't think of you as a Kingdom Hearts person. Like, but have you played all?
He wants your Kingdom Hearts resume.
Yes.
I've played all the Kingdom Hearts games except for Chain of Memories and
Mobile
358
games.
over 2 days.
Have you played Dream Drop Distance?
Yes.
What did you
Okay,
think?
then you have that on me because that one I just skipped. And then when I see the plot synopsis, I'm like, I'm good.
I actually
It's
played
not-
that too.
It's not that bad.
bad.
Gameplay wise, it's fun, but like the story is.
Dude, you're missing out on Neku, dude. Best
Yeah,
part of
true.
that game.
It is.
That's true. Sometimes I do have to be reminded that World Ends With You like had that appearance in Kingdom Hearts. Like I
Yep.
know about it, but I
I-
just don't consciously think of it.
I'm still not entirely unconvinced that there's not going to be some random Kingdom Hearts connection in Neo. I swear, I have a feeling that's going to happen.
Did they already got rid of all the Final Fantasy characters in Kingdom Hearts 3? If I remembered.
In
Well, they came
Reminds,
back
they
in
come
Remind.
back, but barely.
In Remind, they have a small role.
Yeah.
Also,
But, yeah, I can't wait for the.
character. How dare you? I said Neku, not a Final Fantasy character. How
Yes.
dare you?
No,
characterize
but yeah, I can't wait for the Nomura Kingdom Hearts World Ends With You Final Fantasy Megaverse
No,
cinematic
Yeah.
universe.
Oh my god.
Get away from World Ends
No,
With You.
George's legitimately excited.
Tearing up.
Sarcastically, and George is like, "Oh my god!"
I would honestly detest that.
Yeah.
That's my
but
MCU.
it's a really good port. I did kind of say that the Pirates of the Caribbean world is where the game struggles the most. I'd say that most of the game I hover like above 100 FPS. The Pirates world, it's more like around 80 to 90 FPS, which is still like obviously way
Terrible.
more than playable, but
Yeah,
Unacceptable.
unacceptable.
First world problems. Oh, my game's not running at 70 FPS.
Well, there's always like a section of a game. I feel like that is kind of like incredibly
only,
taxing
like-
compared to the rest.
If I don't have the FPS counter on, I do notice it, but it's not something that stands out to me that much. The only reason I've been keeping track of it is because I am going to write impressions about the PC port, and it's like I want it's noteworthy. It's something I should mention.
Due diligence. Yeah, I like that.
But not a big surprise. It still on average runs like twice as fast as the PS4 version did. Because Pirates on the PS4, that was even on the Pro at 1080p. I saw those freaking crabs.
I played. I think I mentioned this last time, but I played Kingdom Hearts 3 on a base PS4, and then like by the time Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, like I gotta get a Pro for this. Like this thing is struggling, so that's when I got my and I never revisited Kingdom Hearts 3 with a PS4 Pro, and then I got it on PC. I haven't played it yet. I'll squeeze it in between the Yakuzas at some point.
I must be getting old, man. I thought that looked great on the base PS4.
It does look pretty good. It's maybe not performance wise, but the fact that they were able to tailor Unreal Engine to that art style as well as they did, I think is actually pretty good, pretty cool.
I think the most impressive thing about Kingdom Hearts 3 is how, like, obviously it's been a thing even since the series' inception to have like character designs and slight like art styles for each of the worlds be a little bit different depending on like which Disney world you're in.
Yeah.
But they really, I feel like Kingdom Hearts 3 is the first game in the series that actually realized it.
Sora in Caribbean World, the way that they made it like not photorealistic, but they shifted it in that direction, but not in a way that made it like awkward or unappealing. But they just kind of like reimagined what it would look like. And I thought that actually, like compared to their effort in the PS2 game, which ended up looking pretty drab.
Not to mention how Sora looks like a toy in the Toy Story world, and he looks like a monster in the monster world. It's like, that's what I mean by they fully realized it there, because it's like, you had bits and pieces of it, like the Nightmare Before Christmas world in previous games, but never really to the same extent as you see in Kingdom Hearts 3.
I think hearing you say that, like, not to turn this into Kingdom Hearts podcast, but like, it reminds me of when we used to, yes, I got my way. I remember when they used to do those trailers. They used to do those trailers like every E3 and every like game event. I remember the one where they did one at the Xbox event, which was showing off Frozen. I was like, oh, cool, but I didn't really care for Frozen. I was like, yeah. And then they did the one at the Sony event, and it opened up with them in the Pirates graphics. I think that was the moment where I was like, oh my god, like Kingdom Hearts 3 is real and it's happening soon. Like that. I have very fond memories of watching those trailers and just being in tears.
Man, I remember that summer. They had like different splices of that trailer. Like they had like 5 in a month and a half, because like one, I forget if it was Xbox or Sony, but they had one. Square Enix's own presentation had one. They had a different one for the concert.
Yeah,
and then they had like another different one. And so like every single time it was like, this trailer starts the same, but I bet there's 10 seconds of different footage at the end. So I feel for people like Adam who had to like cover those and be like, how does X trailer differ from Y trailer, different from C trailer, different from W trailer? I've run out of letters.
I think the biggest opportunity of just Kingdom Hearts overall, when you're talking about graphical enhancements, is we'll never get like a truly realized like modern model of Kurt Ziza.
Oh yes,
Kurt Ziza's
where is Kurt Ziza now? How's he doing?
I wanna see Kurt Ziza again, man. I miss him.
I kind of like that Kingdom Hearts 1 just had like, they had obviously Kurt Ziza was wholly original. He was like a name in the game winner, contest winner, and then they had like the Neverland Ghost bell tower boss, just like another original boss fight. Well, maybe the boss fight itself is sucky, but like it doesn't always have to be like, how does this guy tether into the future of the series? Oh no, it's like we just had an idea and we ran with it. Like that's all it is. Like it doesn't have to be like, oh my god, I'm at the end of Birth by Sleep and I'm fighting another hooded organization member or whatever. How does he tie in? Or
I forgot that Kingdom Hearts 3 even have a Sephiroth like super boss fight.
No Sephiroth.
It had a Raging Inferno. It's Monkey's Paw.
Oh yeah, it was just like a big Heartless, right?
Yeah, that's you're like, oh yeah, it's nice that they do original designs, and then Monkey Paw Curls. It's like Kingdom Hearts 3, the epic conclusion. You have nameless, really bad, heartless boss fight. It's like, oh man.
All right, there's also you don't just have to be original standalone. There's also a certain bar you have to reach. Maybe. But then, of course, Remind decides to go completely opposite direction and introduces a whole bunch of wacky, off the wall, wild shit, for lack of a better phrase. So James will get to enjoy that soon.
Yep. Well, I have been spoiled a little bit on it because I think I mentioned in the past that I don't really care too much about the Kingdom Hearts storyline, but unfortunately, I understand it because there's a group of people I follow on Twitter that are huge like nerds about the lore and stuff. And every so often, I
Kingdom Hearts outsider perspective.
Just they argue about the lore, and I see the conversations, and it's just osmosis. It just like a sponge, it gets sucked up, and it's like, God damn it, Nomura.
I feel like I understand. I feel like I understand most of Kingdom Hearts, but then like when you get to the mobile stuff, I'm like, actually, never mind.
Don't worry, not even Kingdom Hearts fans understand the mobile stuff.
But I saw like some people who were like legitimately. I saw a few people, which cool for them or whatnot, but they were legitimately excited for. There was this announcement that like the end of the mobile game, they delayed the shutdown for it, and it's like going to be split into 2 parts. And they're like legitimately like theory crafting, like what's going to happen? Like the first part's probably this, and the second part is this. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, like the very end of Kingdom Hearts 3, without talking about what it is, I'm like, I have the faintest idea of what is going on, but I am along for the ride.
A bit, to be fair.
Okay. If George was confused, then I feel all right.
Yeah, I had to Google it straight away, and I blitzed through that game when
Hold on, let me get my flip phone to that that's recoded game, and let me tell you what happened.
I still can't believe that they made coded actually somewhat important in Kingdom Hearts 3. Why?
They want you to play all the games, okay?
Fucking
it was like the one game you could like skip, and that's like, well,
no.
What if what if you were told that you could skip Recoded, but Nomura was like, haha, Dark Cube. But yeah, this has just been the week of Square Enix bullshit with me. So the Final Fantasy XIV patch came out, 5.5.
Yep.
It's kind of been lonely not talking about 14 on the podcast because there was like last year, that section of like 2 months where I just had nothing to talk about but my daily escapades in Final Fantasy XIV. So this is the first half of the final patch for 14. Final story content patch. The
specifically
next
for Shadowbringers. Yeah.
For Shadowbringers, yeah, sorry. So ends off on a cliffhanger. We're gonna have more information with 5.55 whenever that comes out. I'm guessing that's in like 8 weeks, something like that. And then that's it. No more story content until Endwalker comes out later this year. So for all intents and purposes, like besides like a few story scenes are going to be added in a couple like months' time, Shadowbringers is finished. Like everything that they had to add has been added. Every like bit of content that they promised or they've most recently promised is now out, and it's interesting to think about. So
how's your overview of the game as a whole? That's my question.
That's a loaded question.
That's a loaded question.
I feel loaded, but all encompassing.
I feel like Shadowbringers has the best base game story in the in 14. I'd say up through 5.3, the story is really good, but 5.4 and 5.5 story, I don't know how to feel about yet. But granted, the pacing I've experienced with 5.4 and 5.5 is different than the pacing I experienced for literally the rest of the game. So maybe I would feel different about it if I hadn't played it when the patches came out and I immediately like moved into like Endwalker and I didn't have to worry about waiting. So I'm kind of lenient on that. I do have some issues with the storytelling because like they announced this big bad at the end of 5.4, and it's like, oh man, is that going to be part of next? No, you kill him at the end of 5.5.
Oh,
and it's like, oh, that's a bit of a waste. Generally, I feel like, and this is definitely going to be a hot take, looking back on it, I think that Stormblood's side content is better than Shadowbringers. Because Stormblood, you had a deep dungeon in the tower. You had Eureka. You had the Four Lords storyline. You had two ultimate trials. You had the Rathalos trial, which was like actually decent like crossover content. Whereas with Shadowbringers, like the side content that they've added over time, it's not bad, but it definitely feels like a step down because there's no deep dungeon. There's only one ultimate trial, though. Granted, that's because of the whole thing with COVID and whatnot, so it makes sense. I don't think I really like the last Nier raid, the last Nier Alliance raid. I think it's possibly the best Alliance raid in the game. But the problem is that I wasn't a huge fan of the first two Nier Alliance raids, and I feel like looking at like Stormblood's Alliance raids, the Return to Evilis raids, those were really good. Like taken as a whole, they're the best Alliance raid series in the entire game. It's really inventive. It's like got just amazing visuals. It's got
Sorry to be green on this, but when you specify alliance raid, can you just give me like the one sentence what that means compared to like another style of raid?
regular raids are 8-man, alliance raids are 24-man.
Oh, okay, so big raid. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're more casual content because obviously with 24 people, it's like herding cats. So
And I'm guessing with the little bit of online experience I have playing other games, like the more people you throw at a raid, it's this is going to be obvious. I'm stating this like it's some enlightening thing, but every individual person has to carry less of the burden. It's easier to kind of squeak through and let other people carry the load compared to like 8-man, where if one person makes a mistake, it's much more costly.
Yep, that's exactly it. So Shadowbringers overall, good expansion. I think people are maybe a little bit too hard on Stormblood. Sure, the main storyline for Stormblood's disappointing, but the patches were really good. The side content's really good. It was a good expansion too. But anyways, I'm excited for Endwalker. You're saying?
So I don't want to like boil it down to like something. I don't want to dilute it too much, but like if you were to tier it, you'd say like Shadowbringers is pretty damn good, but Stormblood plus its post-launch patches is also pretty damn good. Shadowbringer post expansion patches maybe not so much, like a step down.
Yeah, I'd say that overall, I'd probably put them on the same tier, which that's really going to piss people off. But basically, Shadowbringers, it's the best story, and it's the best experience of going through the actual expansion, not the patches. Stormblood, if you care about the gameplay aspects of 14, like the raids and the trials, Stormblood's better at that.
It had a better tail after the expansion release, according to your experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing I saw was like about this FF14 is a friend of mine streamed like the last new Nier raid, and I was like, you know what?
It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
It's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Like I really dug how they did the final boss of that thing. I was like, that's definitely
Do I need to play this Nier raid to understand the stuff they're adding to the Nier remaster?
Who knows? Who knows? Oh.
Well,
I'll put it
that's
on the to-do
cryptic
list
about-
along with the stage plays and everything else.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. Still having a good time with 14. Obviously I'm gonna play Endwalker at launch, so I'm excited for that. Not much else to say.
You got the second half of 5.5 somewhere between now and then, right?
Yeah, but it's basically just like tying up loose ends before the next expansion, so it's not a huge deal.
Kind of like an epilogue denouement thing, or I don't know what you would call it.
You could call it an epilogue to the current expansion, but it's also just as much like a prologue to the next one. So that sort of deal. Yep.
And with that, we are hour and 45 minutes in, and I think everyone has managed to get their say. Is that the case? I did not miss anyone? So we will go on into some of the stuff we teased about earlier about some of the announcements for the week. Not a ton, but a couple interesting things nested in here. As Chow alluded to, we got the first hints slash, I don't know, confirmation, it's not quite the right word, of a new SaGa project from Square Enix. So obviously SaGa Frontier Remastered launched a couple days ago, and during the launch stream, the SaGa series creator Kwazu basically declared that his team is currently preparing for a new game in the series. On top of that, he's expressed interest in saying, like, what other SaGa properties should we be remastering? With ideas such as like SaGa Frontier 2, Unlimited SaGa, which I want to hear your opinion on that because I only ever hear interesting things about Unlimited SaGa.
My
So
opinion
basic,
on Unlimited?
any opinion, all opinions on Unlimited SaGa. I don't know anything about the game other than that it is something.
I can explain a little bit of it, but
well, maybe we'll put that we'll push that down the list a little bit because it's not the main topic here. The main topic is that the SaGa series seems like it will continue, and it seems like the remastering works that they've done with Romancing Saga and now SaGa Frontier, obviously, has kind of sparked a bit of new life in it. So, what do we think about this?
Glimmered a whole new life in it. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I have to use the appropriate.
Oh, I just got that.
Thank you, George.
I think this is really, I mean, it's not to say like, of course we're all jazzed about it. Like I'm glad that SaGa has oddly become one of like the most consistent series now. Like I don't know. It's weird to see like SaGa enjoying success, and I think Kawazu and all the talented developers around it, deserve it. It's such a as time goes on, and we see more RPGs in general, both Western and Japanese, like modernize, think about new ways to bring a more modern experience to an audience. And in some respects, that's good in like expanding the audience, but in a way, it dilutes some of the core systems along the way. I find myself wanting to get more old school experiences, and it's hard to find new old school experiences that aren't just like remastering a previous thing that I've already played. I want something like Scarlet Grace that was able to incorporate some of those old school experiences, but in like modernized, fun ways where it doesn't feel like I'm pulling its teeth. So and SaGa, I know I can like relatively rely on to like bring that experience, and I like that about it.
I was wondering, I don't want to like push, but I was wondering if you had any takeaways from this news, just because you seem to be like really vibing with what you've played of the series recently.
I mean, so there was this period of time there in like the PlayStation 3 era where all Japanese developers, but like Square Enix especially, just is really struggling. And okay, I have complex thoughts on this. So we were talking before about how SaGa Frontier had like a lot of cut content, and a friend of mine was actually making an argument that sort of mindset in the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 era. Man, I'm not sure how to sort this out. So SaGa Frontier has like a lot of content that was made for the game that never got put into the game. Kenji Ito, who is the composer on SaGa Frontier, actually mentioned that he composed like 150 tracks for the game or something, and a third of them didn't make their way in. And an argument was made that Square Enix or Squaresoft at the time, they were kind of this excess as a developer, like just kind of kitchen sink it, like make a bunch of stuff and some of it will get into the game or whatever. And like they just would make excess. And that's why you ended up with cut content or unreleased tracks or whatever. And that sort of philosophy probably harmed them as development got trickier and harder with like the PS3 era, where they had to have more focused, streamlined workflows in terms of how to actually make a game. And perhaps because of that, series like SaGa, like Mana, they didn't have entries like HD entries for a long time. They had a few on like DS or whatever, but we got a couple of releases on PlayStation 2, and then they just disappeared, right? Like there's no Mana game on PlayStation 3, right? I'm not misremembering. There's no SaGa game. There wasn't even really a Kingdom Hearts game on PlayStation 3, right? So there was remasters. So Um,
And that kitchen sink
Since
approach,
we've seen, like,
kind
brand
of
new entries?
when you discuss that, I think of like Final Fantasy 15 is what I think about.
Yeah, and they I guess they sort of still embody it in ways, but it like I'm excited to see like stuff like Mana. They had the remaster or the remake really of Trials of Mana, and that significantly surpassed expectations. So I hope they haven't said anything yet, but like hopefully they're going to make a new title, like something brand new. It's been more than a decade since we've had a brand new Mana title, so I'm excited to see that. They've confirmed now that there's going to be a new Saga game. We actually did get a brand new Saga game not too long ago, so maybe not as much of a drought there, but still, it's been it hasn't been like a deluge of Saga games other than re-releases for a bit here, which that's really cool. But the fact that it's like we're going to be seeing a new one, like a brand new one, in addition to stuff like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and stuff like Kingdom Hearts and Nier, which is of course a big Square Enix property now. That's exciting to me that like these franchises are getting new life.
I hope we get similar news on this vein on like for Mana. I hope the Legend of Mana re-release really does well for them. And I want a brand new Mana game and see what that looks like now.
I hope
Yeah.
it looks like Trials because that was like really good. I enjoyed that a lot.
It's good art style for it.
Yeah.
And to circle back on what we started on, a translated statement from Kawazu basically says, like, we've released most of the past titles, including the Saga Collection, but we still have Romancing Saga, SaGa Frontier 2, and Unlimited Saga being left out. Chow, tell me about Unlimited Saga.
Basically in Unlimited Saga, you get to play as multiple characters, just like SaGa Frontier does. The problem with the game is the exploration's really weird. It's like a little tabletop game, and it's like you kind of you step this way, it'll be a booby trap. You're dead. You step this way, it's like you're still hurt for some odd reason, right? Then once you make it to the end of your trip, you basically get all your rewards. It's kind of like it's like Josh explaining how he's playing Oregon Trail. It's like that with Saga.
Saga is like Oregon Trail. This was not the connection I was thinking.
That's the title.
It's definitely like less forgiving, like especially when I think about like how combat is initiated that game, because it kind of has like a certain. It's kind of like Star Ocean 3 where you have like really two life bars in battle. You have like HP and LP.
Yeah. One of the cool battle mechanics is like if this boss has like 1 million HP, you can't really hurt it, but it has like hardly any LP. If you're able to kill it with LP, then you can kill it like that, right? It's
Yeah,
like
it's something
something
like Star Ocean 3 with like you'll have like Star Ocean 3 bosses have like inflated health, but depleting MP in that game, your magic points, like that can actually kill you too. In Star
Bail
Ocean.
me out here. There's a game that I played where either if your HP or MP went to 0, you died. What game was that?
Star Ocean 3.
Oh, is that Star Ocean 3?
Yep.
Yep.
I thought there was something else. Maybe that's what it is, though. It's like at the edge. It's at the fringe of my stupid brain. But I remember that like technique where it's like this boss has very little MP, so just use like magic hammer attacks and you'll win no problem.
And I'm trying to remember like what was the rules for it, because it's not like you don't get like full HP and LP every battle like in Saga Frontier. Like you're not fully healed. You have to like I think rest at a town or arrive at a town to even like and you couldn't flee as well, just like other older Saga iterations before the remasters. So it really locked you in. So if they give you the opportunity to flee, I imagine in Unlimited Saga Remaster, it'll lessen the blow. But it is very much it feels like a choose your own adventure game, except you're getting fucked along the way no matter what if you don't know what you're doing, and it's easy to get lost.
Yeah, the battle system's even more convoluted than Scarlet Grace. I think Scarlet Grace basically took Unlimited Saga and just refined that battle system to make it work.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd be really, because out of Romancing Saga, like we'll talk about Romancing Saga 1 in a bit, but like out of those three, both Romancing Saga 1, Saga Frontier 2, and the Unlimited Saga, I'm most interested to see what they would do to Unlimited Saga to like modernize it, because I'm not saying it's a great game, but I feel like you miss something out of that game if you provide too many conveniences to it as well.
I feel like they should provide like 2 modes, like an enhanced mode, like the Odin Sphere remaster.
Yeah.
Like they should have original mode if you like it, the old ruthless game, or the enhanced mode if you want all the new features like the quality of life, or or something like that, right?
Oh yeah, that wouldn't be a bad solution to that. I wonder what they would do in that enhanced mode. Like would they like an Odin Sphere, would they like just revamp the skill system overall, just like provide like a new way to progress your characters?
Yeah, it'll make both audience happy, right? Like a new audience that want to try it, and the hardcore purists,
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's interesting, but circling back around to like Romancing Saga 1, that's even a complicated one as well, because we already had a remake of Romancing Saga 1. So if they were to reintroduce Romancing Saga 1, now would it be the original version, which I'm not really a big fan of, or Minstrel Song, which I really do like Minstrel Song.
I think Minstrel Strong is a good game. I think the only problem was the art style. I think it turned off a lot of people with the kind of like the Donkey Kong mode head art style.
I kind of like
I recall it.
but yeah, yeah. I don't know. There's too many things you'd have to do with the original. I feel like to like get it up to snuff, but it could be done. And Saga Frontier 2
I'm
is
just,
pretty
I'm just
cool.
letting you know that as soon as Chow described it that way, I'm like, I gotta pull up some screenshots.
Uh-huh. And
I see it. Donkey Kong mode head. That's a weird explanation, but it does work. Okay.
definitely have big heads for sure.
Maybe it's a normie explanation for not a JRPG. I don't know.
No, it worked out.
But I think
Basically, I've learned over the last couple podcasts that I keep just going back. I've only played Saga Square Grace. I've only played Saga Square Grace. Well, maybe now I'm going to have the opportunity to branch out from that a bit.
these are the best ways to play it right now.
Mhm.
They're making smart remasters, like, and they have a pretty good record. Unlike Mana, like Mana has had like the Adventures of Mana on Vita, which is like, yeah, it's okay. And then we don't want to talk about what happened to Secret of Mana, but they got there with Trials of Mana. Um,
Like
so
if they're willing to put the effort and make a decent game, I think the Mana series can grow. If they just put like a half-ass effort like their Secret Mana remake, then it's gonna bomb.
Maybe this is a dumb question, but why do we always pair Saga and Mana together? Like, it
I
seems like
think
whenever we
'cause it
talk about
used to
one,
be
we always talk about the other.
I think because it used to be one of their top series from Square back in their earlier days. Because back then, Square used to know the Mana games were their top dog for action RPGs until they started creating the Kingdom Hearts franchise, right? So I guess that's why people like to compare
I
these
mean, yeah,
series.
they kind of they occupied a very similar space for like it's the RPG series that were big in back in the day for Square, but that weren't Final Fantasy, you know.
Mm.
So pre Kingdom Hearts era and now pre Nier era, I guess.
They were like the two casualties of that PS3 era that Adam
Yeah,
mentioned, where it's kind of, and now both of them have a new leash on life.
yeah, and I really hope that like Legend of Mana finds its audience, like in a pretty big audience, hopefully, because you know, yeah, to me the more like old school RPG series that are lost to time, the more it kind of not hurts the industry. I don't know if it hurts the industry, but it hurts me personally.
That's what matters.
Yes, exactly. I know. I think this news is all good news, and hopefully we'll hear a similar announcement in the following months for Mana, and hopefully they're like, yeah, we should do this, and hopefully they'll do another Live Alive stream that actually announces that they'll do Live Alive remastered for real.
I don't know. You're asking for too much. Like,
I know,
come on, rein in their expectations of it.
and maybe they'll announce, hey, we'll do a new Live Alive. It's like, oh, okay, finally we can get to the real news then.
Yes. We got a surprise announcement from Konami during the Nintendo Indie World Showcase. They announced a new roguelike roguevania called GetsuFumaDen Undying Moon. This is a side-scrolling, again, Metroidvania with an art style that's kind of like a mix between like Okami and Muramasa, focused on like Japanese mythology, that sort of story setting, with a 2-minute teaser trailer that is pretty much all gameplay. So What do we think about this? I just watched the trailer before the podcast. I think it looks pretty neat.
Guess no one played the Nintendo version.
Yeah, there's a sequel to the original Nintendo game because there was a GetsuFumaDen game on Famicom. And
Oh,
Don't forget, it was also on the PC Engine.
yeah, it's true.
This is why I don't know why.
The only reason
Go
I
ahead.
even know of this game is because of High Score Girl.
That's a way to
Wow.
get to there. Nice, good job. I forgot they featured it on that show. Yeah, this is out of nowhere. This is I think I don't know if Konami. I think Konami's co-developing it with a company called Gura. I think. Is that correct? Guru. See, I think of the VTuber now. I'm already getting mixed up. This is, yeah, this is the from the Famicom game. I never played the Famicom game. I've seen it, but I've seen footage of it, but I've never played
The
it.
Famicom game predates me. That's my excuse.
And it's like it's your typical side scroller hack and slash from back in the day, which is I never played it, so I can't say it for sure. Like if people loved it, but seeing this new footage of this game, this is neat, and I think it's coming next month to Steam Early Access.
Yeah, I was going to just go over this. It is coming to Steam Early Access May 13th. And then obviously it showed up in a Nintendo Indie World Showcase. It's planning for a Switch release next year in 2022 at some point.
Yeah, and the way they're rolling that out, I believe, is if you get it on Steam Early Access, you can actually play the original Famicom game as part of that package. And on the website, I think they already are teasing like a free DLC character as well as other ongoing plans to bring additions to the game and whatnot. It looks cool. I'm not really familiar with the original game, admittedly, but what I saw was like, oddly enough, when I first saw this game, a bit of Muramasa came to mind and a little bit of Okami, as you were talking about. But since I've been kind of messing with it recently, it kind of reminded me of World of Demons, the Platinum Games now Apple Arcade game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was like, but it looks better than that. I'm not really a big fan of World of Demons the more I play of it, but this one looks interesting, and
It looks a little bit more deliberate. Like it's
Yeah.
not as flashy and fast. It's a little bit more slower and methodical, which isn't necessarily bad. It's hard to know without playing it though, like if it feels good. But just based on the trailer, it looks just like it has a little bit more weight to it. It's not just pizzazz. It's got, it seems like the sort of thing where if you sit there and take damage, you're going to take a lot of damage, like because everything's a little bit more telegraphed and slow. At least that's my impression from 2 minutes of footage.
I guess this really opens up like the floor now for Konami. It's like that Konami wanted new releases with like their classic properties, and I guess this is their first step into it. Konami back in the game, then I guess.
Mystic English sequel, please.
But it was just bizarre to see the Konami logo in the Indie World stream first for Nintendo. I'm like, this is all right, I guess. This is what we're doing now. But hopefully it leads to more Konami properties being revisited, because as much as Konami has done right or wrong in the past few years, they have a whole wealth of properties that
Right.
see, they have some of the most classic properties in existence. Not just Metal Gear Solid. Silent Hill still kind of twiddling its thumbs, and the whole wealth of other ones.
Next up, we've got a trio of Square Enix announcements, and two of these at least are basically just follow-ups on bigger headlines from previous weeks. So obviously last week we talked about the big release date reveal and new trailer for Neo, The World Ends With You. Obviously it is coming out on July 27th, and then a PC release in summer. That was last week's news. So this week kind of followed it up with some character bios, some new artwork, a little bit of details on this pin system. So I don't know if there's really, as someone who has not played the original game, I don't know if there's any deeper meaning to really glean from this, or if there's anything here that really stands out. Maybe how it plays on a single screen device compared to the 2-screen device. Did you guys who have played the original game have any takeaways?
I only played the original DS version. I never played the remaster because I can't imagine what the game would be like without having 2 screens.
Yeah, so you weren't here last week, Chow, but that was kind of obviously a big discussion when we talked about Neo, about how the battle system has to inherently be different and likely simpler just because it doesn't even have that option. It's going to be it's going to be The World Ends With You remastered by default. Like, it's not even paring itself down from anything. This is just how it has to be built for the Switch.
I mean, I'm excited. I just want to play it. At this point, it's cool to see all these new things, but I just want to get my hands on it. And yeah, I mean, they keep showing off the new character that they introduced in the final remix, New Day. Like, I'm just like, I'm so curious because that character didn't really do much in that New Day scenario from what I remember, and I'm just really interested in how this all links up. For me, like, I guess my questions at the moment, since this is going to be a sequel to the anime that's airing right now, like, because like the anime's second episode aired yesterday, and I watched that, and I was like,
Yeah,
I feel like they're already like, nothing has really changed from the core of like what's happened, but I feel like they're reordering some stuff in the anime if my memory is serving correctly.
and the time kind of matches up. By the time the anime is over, it's almost like the time when the game comes out.
Yeah, and like, from what I remember, I'm not going to spoil like anything specific, but in the way that the first episode ends, Neku was trying to, basically get rid of his partner, but then in the second episode after that, like, they already delved into that partner's backstory, and I was like, I don't think this happens that
That
soon.
is early, yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't watched it, but
yeah, because there were some key things that happened like in between those two events that, like, I guess they're gonna revisit now in the third episode by the third episode's title. So I think that's how it went. I'm like, oh, are they gonna reorder things, and how will this affect, or are they just like kind of like reordering it so it flows better narratively for a TV anime adaptation?
So obviously the news this week is just some character bios for some antagonists or anti-heroes. Shoka, Korea, and Uzuki. Talks about the pin system a bit, a few of the abilities. It's a little bit detailed, a little bit of minutia, but we do have it up on the site if you're interested. And a bunch of new screenshots showing a bunch of English text and dialogue if you want to get a reading for how that feels to read. And they did talk that the composer of the original game, Takaharu Ishimoto, is returning, and obviously there's new tracks, rearranged familiar tracks such as Twister and Calling.
Okay, so unfortunately, like, not on this game, but for the anime that's ongoing, they had to like replace the opening.
oh
Because
yeah, I've heard this. Yeah,
the original, because one of the drummer for that band got into I think something, and then like that they were just hastily removed from the anime. So they replaced the track with a new version of, I think it's a remix version of Twister, and
it's bad.
it doesn't really flow well with the openings animation. Like, you can easily tell that, like, oh, these things don't align well at all. It feels so mismatched. It's like, I guess you can really tell that, like, the flow of the opening was meant for the original song and not whatever was replaced. It wasn't great, and it has to be like this because of the circumstances. But it's one of those things that you see. It's like, oh no. Like, George, you saw that, right? That clip.
Yeah, you shared it on the staff chat, and at first I was like, it's just Twister, and then it starts going to the lyrics. It's just like, but it's not. It's like it's off Twister.
Off Twist.
It's like Whirlwind or something. It's like off brand.
Yeah.
The second Square Enix announcement is on a similar front. It's basically just more media dump about the upcoming Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade Intermission DLC, which is the Yuffie, yes, capital INTER mission, Intermission. So obviously we kind of had a blowout of information on this a couple weeks ago, where we learned about the playstyle, how Yuffie is playable, and Sonon is kind of like an NPC ally. And what this media dumps on is a little bit about the Avalanche HQ. So that's kind of a big idea of the Final Fantasy VII Remake in general. that kind of is a little bit different, or at least shifted from the original game, where Avalanche is like this larger corporation or this larger entity that the Midgar group was just a small fraction of. So it introduces some like new original characters here. So
Billy Bob and Nio. Hell yeah.
yeah, so the short-haired glasses
name.
Tifa, not Tifa, is Neo. There's a guy who wears like a beanie or headband named Billy Bob.
He looks
we get a little
from Guilty Gear. That's what I choose to believe.
we got a little bit of detail about Weiss, which is from Dirge of Cerberus. And I know when Weiss is first, is it Weiss or Weiss? I don't know. But when he was first announced, people were kind of like planning or hoping or thinking that he might just be like a simulator battle. Like, he's not really around, is he? But I don't know. It seems like he might actually play a role. We'll have to see to exactly what extent.
Chow, did
He's
you?
voiced.
Oh, go finish your thought. Sorry.
I was going to say, Weiss, his English voice is an English voice of Frieza, Damon Mills.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
I'm interested to see that.
So, okay,
I
so
don't recognize the other voice actors.
Joji Nakata is a very popular Japanese voice. His most famous role is Kotomine Kirei from the Fate series. He's done a lot of other voice roles. Chow, in the Japanese version of Dirge of Cerberus, was Joji Nakata always Weiss?
He was.
Oh, okay. I didn't know because I never played the Japanese.
They got the original Japanese voice for like pretty much everyone in the FF7 remake. It's the only thing I don't know what they're going to do in part 2 is Reno, because his voice actor passed away this last year.
Yeah, unfortunately. But
Unfortunately.
Go for it.
Sorry, I'm thinking ahead. I'm reading through like this character bios here, and it's like 4 original characters that are part of this Avalanche HQ. And I'll be honest, like I'm looking at this, I'm like not really mustering up excitement. Like, oh, I guess I got to learn. Like, I don't know. Like, it's Final Fantasy VII Remake, but here we're gonna put in like this original story thrown in here. I guess I can hope it's good, and I don't know, but I'm just like it's not really what I'm excited for.
I
Like
have a
A
feeling-
lot of people I know were like excited to hear about this new content with Yuffie, but the moment when there's Dirge of Cerberus stuff, they're like, "Oh God, I don't want to do any
Yeah,
of this."
it's like Yuffie is obviously a highlight. Then you got Weiss is kind of like this wild card, like, oh, he's from the expanded universe. And then we've got 5 original characters, these 4 HQ guys plus Sonon. And I'm just like, I'm not really that excited about that. And for whatever reason, just like, I guess.
Billy Bob, so
Yes.
I hear from
Well, I have a feeling they're not going to be really like crucial characters. Like I remember before Final Fantasy VII Remake released, they did similar bios for people like that like simulator kid, for the Chocobo guy, for the dresser,
Kyrie
Madam Witch.
and Leslie and
Yeah, and like they're like sure, but they're not like there's not going to be anyone out there like, oh yeah, I love Leslie. He's such a good character. you know?
Leslie's actually a great character.
Oh yeah, I know Leslie and Kyrie.
Leslie's actually my favorite character, and I'm offended you would say that.
bring Simulator Kid to Dissidia. That's what I want to see.
But yeah, so I guess for people who really want to know like everything about the game before it comes out, there it is. You can read all these bios. They do also talk about like Yuffie's ATB abilities, so Banishment and Windstorm. So you can read about that. It's kind of what you'd expect it to be. I am interested to see if it feels like it plays any differently with the way that it's kind of like a tag team system here instead of a full party.
I hope when they introduce Weiss in this game, I don't know how the fuck they do it, but I hope that when you have a Weiss scene, there's just constantly like images of Dirge of Cerberus back on the PS2 blaring on screen for like a split second. I was like, I don't know why they do it, but they should do it.
Man, I like don't actually remember anything from Dirge of Cerberus. Like
I remember the
but
stupid teleporting scene where
yeah,
the one where Vincent's like he gets his gun pointing behind Vice, and Vice is behind him, and Vincent's behind him.
Yeah, dude, that's so good, but bad, but really.
but
good.
like it's like a 20-hour game I played 15 years ago or whatever, and just like I guess I should study up.
You're gonna have
We gotta wait for Ever Crisis and get it back on our bearings for all the FF7 expanded universe lore.
If it's up on any of the PSN stores, make sure you grab it before they shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't think it is. If you want to play it, you have to get a disc.
Shit.
I just the other day looked up how much 3D Dock Game Heroes is going for because it never got a PSN release. So nothing's changed for that game, but it's going for over $100 used now ever since the announcement of PSN going down, even though it was never available digitally in the first place.
Yeah, I know, that's weird. I still have that on my shelf. I love that game.
The last bit of Square Enix news in this trilogy is we have a verbal commitment from the Nier series account that the Steam version of Nier Automata will get an upgrade patch that is in development. This is obviously on the heels of a separate not Game Pass, Windows Store port of Nier Automata that works better out of the box, that resulted in the Steam version of the game being heavily downvoted and review bombed. So last time I looked, it had dropped into like a recent review, mostly negative.
Remember,
And
kids, bullying works.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's the sort of review bomb that isn't like. So obviously, Steam has a system over the last couple of years where if it's external to the game development, they like flag it as being an off-topic review bomb. That's not really the case here. It's basically saying, hey, there's another PC version of the game that runs better. Though of course some people will say like, well, if you slick and mod up the Steam version fully, it's actually better. It's like, sure, fine. But
you had to go to like outside of your, not everyone wants to do that.
Right, with a big footnote like, oh, it doesn't work out of the box, but that's okay, I guess. But there are no details on this. Basically,
imagine buying a car and there's no steering wheel, and they tell you had to go for a third party.
Yeah, it's a great car once you fill in the gaps and add the missing pieces. Sure, but yeah, no details. They just say an upgrade patch is in development. That's it.
So, like, I'm not gonna claim to be a marketing expert, but I bet for like catalog sales, having that Steam page say recent reviews are mostly negative, I bet that has like a significant effect on people who, obviously if you're a Square Enix fan, if you're a Nier fan, you've already played this game. But clearly this game has shown appeal outside of that audience to a broader audience. But if you're browsing Steam and you see that recent reviews are negative, I bet there's a significant, number of sales at risk there.
Especially, the biggest part about that too is like just the color coding on that. It's like whenever like whenever you decrease in like positive to negative reviews, that becomes
red.
It becomes darker red too. It's like
or if you're like sorting by publisher.
Yeah.
Square had all this time to fix it. Like, is it like they just want to fix this before the remaster replicant comes out?
Well, I doesn't seem like it's going to be fixed before then, unless they surprise us. I would doubt it. That would have to be within the next week. But
I mean, that this is the power of just giving, exposing user reviews, and being able to like say, hey, I want my voice to be heard. It sucks that it had to take all this time, like 4 to 5 years out. But hopefully whatever fix they're gonna bring to the Steam version will finally resolve these issues that it's been having just out of the box. It sucks that it had to be like done this way. Common sense would say, just do it. Just like fix it. Not even just how many years later. Just like you would hope that this fix would have been done within the first 6 months of its PC release. But now that it's come to this point, this breaking point.
It's a very similar sort of thing. It was not as big a scale, but the surprise PC launch of Chrono Trigger went through a very similar, only much quicker series where it got bagged for being a very shoddy port, and then they had like 5 pretty rapid patches to bring it up pretty much up to snuff. I think I might have a couple like niggling, lingering issues, but they buffed that one out quick because unlike Nier Automata, because Nier Automata was such a great game, independent of that, I think a lot of these issues some people might say like, oh, you're hypocritical. You didn't whine about this before, but it was kind of like, it was always like third on the rung. It's like, it's a great game. Once you patch it, then the third thing out of your mouth was like, it's playable, even though it's not a great port. Where since they have the other storefront now, you can kind of focus on that and say like, hey, now I can just get it from this other storefront and no longer have this issue. I don't think that's really being hypocritical. And like Adam said, I think it's really just kind of a legacy thing where they just don't want to have that big blemish on one of a major PC storefront. So I feel like they should have had the wherewithal to think of that.
Here's what they should do. They should release a better version stealthily on Epic Game Store, and no one can bitch about it there because there's no user reviews.
There you go. A couple other tiny things at the end here as we start to wrap up. Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2 are getting Switch releases in Japan and Asia in July and August, respectively. So this kind of goes back to the talk about like Switch owners, like as of after the summer, at least in Japan, they won't have to start with Cold Steel 3. They can at least start with Cold Steel 1. Of course, whether we have to ask about the possibility of an English Switch port for those games, I don't know where that lies because obviously we've got different publishers involved between Xseed and Nice America. So I don't know exactly like, can that happen? Will it happen? How can it happen? I actually really don't know.
Couldn't Xseed just release it just like what they did with Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2 and the PS4? While
the licensing particulars in terms of do they have the rights to publish ports, or do they have to like renegotiate?
Yeah,
we don't.
It's a very weird territory.
But for those living in Japan, you can now play Cold Steel 1, 2 ahead of 3 on Switch. So maybe it opens the door for an English version down the road.
I think it's like the Crossbell games are also being released on Switch as well, aren't they?
I haven't kept a track. Like I know those Crossbell Kai games are releasing in a few different places, including PC. But I don't know if they're getting Switch versions.
Anyway,
it's a hard series to follow because you've got like different publishers in different regions for different titles, and then including like Japan and Chinese and Asian versions in different places too. So it's kind of hard to keep track of where everything lands and in what languages.
Yeah, Falcom's a really weird company. Like back in their earlier days, they would have like other companies to make the games for them. Like they had Hudson Soft to make their version of Ys 4. Then later on, they had to go on and say it's not canon because they didn't follow our story outline or something like that.
Yeah, what other series can you say like there's a false fourth entry or like a non-canon fourth entry and then a canon fourth entry? It's kind of weird. Go ahead, Adam.
Falcom is probably one of the most like they're a small company, but in terms of just like mind share, they're one of the most like prominent Japanese developers left that doesn't have like an English branch. Like Koei Tecmo, Bandai Namco, Square Enix, Nippon Ichi Software, Atlas, Sega, like they all have like an English branch that obviously does their work, but Falcom doesn't. So they have to rely on someone else to publish it, and that's why you get this weird stuff happening. So
the indie game Cris Tales finally has a release date. It's constantly like shifted and narrowed, like it's spring or now it's summer. It's coming out on July 20th. So not a whole lot to say other than that. It finally has a release date. This game first showed up at E3 2019, I believe. Made by Colombian studio Dreams Incorporated. It got delayed a few times, obviously, because 2020, I'm sure, kind of sucked for a small indie studio. Looks kind of like a different take on a Chrono Trigger sort of idea with like time shifting mechanics. We've talked about this game a few times over the last couple of years. I think at this point, it's just kind of like, all right, we got a release date. Let's revisit with it then. And then the last thing on the docket here is that we got the announcement of a narrative expansion for Wasteland 3. So we're finally going to the other side of the pond with a Western RPG. Deep Silver has announced the Battle of Steeltown, which is set to release on June 3rd for both PC and console for Wasteland 3. And then it came up with a little 45-second teaser, so not a whole lot.
I'm actually a little bit...
Go ahead.
I'm a little bit disappointed in this. I liked Wasteland 3 as a game, but now with an Exile with Microsoft, I was kind of just like, I'm interested to see what they're going to do next. You know, Wasteland 3, they had to crowdfund, you know, it ended up pretty well, I think. It was in our top 10. It was in our fan top 10. But like, I kind of wanted them to like move on from it, you know, like what's the next thing rather than more. I wasn't really desiring more of Wasteland 3. Does that make sense?
To be fair, with an expansion like this, it's incredibly likely that it's a smaller team working on this, and it's something that team's working on whenever team is working on whatever they're working on.
I actually don't know
next.
how big an Exile is. I know they have 2 studios, so maybe.
I'm kind of with you where we felt the same sort of thing with Outer Worlds for Obsidian, where it started development before the acquisition, and then they had obviously we talked in a previous podcast about the 2 expansions for that, and then we've got this lingering expansion for Wasteland 3 with Battle Steeltown. I enjoyed the game a fair bit. I'm the one that reviewed it for the site, and I reviewed it late, but I liked it enough that I decided to kind of like write up something formally for it. But I'm like not even eager to like do that. Like I had the same lack of enthusiasm for the Outer Worlds thing. I still haven't played those. Like I enjoyed those games, but I don't know, just going back to it after 7 months, 8 months away. I don't know, I'm not enthused by it. It's a downer to end the podcast on. Wasteland 3 is getting expansion. Maybe I'll play it and maybe it'll be exciting. But it's a good game. Like for anyone who's looking for a modern tactical based Western styled RPG, like I would definitely suggest it. It's got some really interesting storytelling and some cool ideas with XCOM style gameplay, which is always, I guess hard to get wrong. Maybe it's easy to get wrong, but they nail it here. So this summer there'll be a little bit more Wasteland 3 to play.
Well, there's still more Genshin news if anyone still care about that.
What is the Genshin news, Joe?
Wow, there's a new
Housing.
patch update coming soon. Wow, yeah, they added a housing system. They
What do you do in the housing system?
Well, you collect points and you could build all these furnitures, and you can get rewarded from how much stuff you own with the housing thing.
You invite
Finally
people to your house?
Decorate your house.
I think it's kind of funny. Like I don't know much about Genshin, but when I posted this news, some people were like, "There's new Zongli content. Forget that. What about housing? Housing? Who cares about Zongli?"
Do I have to gotcha for these housing parts?
It's like they're gonna drive the player base bankrupt, whatever they will do.
That's not a no.
Uh-oh.
But anyways, yeah, there's a new housing system, a lot of quality of life features. They got basically they're gonna reduce half the resin cost for the world boss fights. So
That fixed the problem.
that won't fix the problem as a whole, but I'm just saying that kind of makes it a little easier with your resin problem, maybe. I don't know. But I feel like the content is still coming out a little slowly. If you were watching like the Chinese live stream of the content, they actually showed like 2 characters from the Honkai as their avatar speaking doing the live stream. So people are like, "Oh my god, are they coming soon?" Right?
That's Honkai Impact, another game from MiHoYo.
MiHoYo, yeah. Like they show basically one of the voice actors there that was announcing stuff was using a Yay avatar. So everyone's like, "Is Yay coming?"
But yeah, the 1.5 version of Genshin Impact launches on April 28th. So another thing to look forward to later in the month for you Genshin Impactors.
They've been doing a new patch like every 6 weeks. There's
a new patch every 6 weeks, but there's nothing like no actual content to explore. People want the new region already. I think that's the problem.
I guess the big news out of all this too is like they're gonna release like a PS5 native version. So like you can still play like the Genshin Impact right now on PS5, but I guess this version will be like is supporting native PS5 features. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, that's coming with the update.
Under was it Q&A was there, and the mobile version they're gonna go more with like cloud streaming instead of like you're trying to download all that stuff. You could be like playing a game with cloud streaming instead.
Where's the Switch version?
Well, and you go ask them. I mean, last time when there was a Nintendo Indie, all the comments kept spamming, "Where's Genshin? Where's Genshin?"
Yeah, what was that?
The weird thing about that, if you haven't followed, is they announced it in January 2020, so it's been more than a year, and they haven't mentioned it since. Like even in their press releases, they're like, "Genshin Impact is currently available on PC, phones, and PS4. It's coming to PS5." What about Switch? No mention of Switch.
Don't ask about Switch. Shush.
Right.
I mean that's just a weird thing. Like companies announce a Switch version and then you never hear about it again until like if we're still waiting for like another Eden's developers to acknowledge.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to play on the Switch though. It'll be like, yeah, my PS4 can barely play this game optimally. I can't imagine what it would look like on a Switch.
I don't know. We'll see. That's gonna be a weird thing too. Well, I guess not so much now, but like if another Eden was to come to Switch, it wouldn't be a new version. Like it still have like I assume all the content that's been up to this point, like how the recent PC release is, and that would mean that would have like the Persona 5 and Tales of collab on a Switch version if that were to release. So I don't know. That's weird.
There's one other final note that Josh squeezed in at the end. We have an announcement of a new Persona game. There, how's that for? How's that for?
Wait, that mobile game? Are you talking about that mobile game Code X?
Thank you for bringing down the temperature. So, Chinese developer Perfect World Games has announced CodeName X as a Persona 5 mobile project.
Oh, I saw this. Yeah.
So the thing is I did not learn about this until right as the podcast starts. Through Twitter user ZoogEX, Daniel Ahmad, Perfect World confirmed to him that it is based on the Persona IP, and obviously it doesn't have any sort of English version announcement. But we got a minute reveal trailer for it.
Yeah, and I don't know. That's weird, but sure, I guess. That's I don't know. I'd like to try it, but
I think the thing with mobile gacha games is more like there's just too many in the market. You have to be like lucky to get like a fan base that stick with it. If they don't stick with it, it's gonna close down in like a year or something.
Well, I don't really play like that many gacha games that like don't get released in the West. I guess. I mean, I'll try them out, but I feel like Chinese mobile games are even harder to like get access to because some of them like require like very specific things to even like have access, right? Like some may like ask you to like, hey, you need to confirm that like you're a resident or Chinese citizen to like get access to this mobile game for some of them, which is kind of weird, but that's how it is over there. So who knows? I want to see what this game actually is in motion, and like if they're actually gonna either have Persona characters or just make up their own. Or maybe this is where we'll finally resurface Persona 1 and 2 characters. It's like, fuck.
Yeah, so I kind of fumbled the introduction here because it is a bit cloudy. But basically, nothing in the trailer specifically shows this is a Persona game. But I guess some of the file names for the game's artwork use like the P5 tag. And then I'm poking through the trailer and it has like that Persona Tokyo aesthetic.
Do you have volume on?
Oh no, I don't.
The music. I know people are like will say like any jazz music sounds like Persona 5, but this one does sound like Persona 5.
All right, but then
that is becoming one of those people now.
If only play Persona 5.
I don't know, man. If it's a gacha game, they could sell those Persona 1 alts. Remember how like in the Western release in Persona 1 where one of the characters completely got changed to a blonde guy or something like that?
Oh, you know, that was like oh man, I already forgot the mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, they changed his skin to become a black person in the localized release. That was a choice back then.
Different times.
Yeah, well, in a gacha game, you could sell those characters as alts, you know?
Man, that'd be so wrong. So many levels. God. But you know, that's the market.
So we'll stay tuned and see if CodeName X or Cross, I never know which one it is these days, becomes a significant thing. Or if it's just going to be
same thing
relegated to China phones. And that covers us for the podcast. So we managed to get a good length out of it since we had a pretty good talk at the start about everything we've been playing from all sorts of different series. So that was kind of a cool set of discussions. I'm glad we got the chance to talk about them today. As always, you can read about all the news that we talked about up on our website at rpgsite.net. You can join our Discord channel by hitting the link at the top of the rpgsite.net homepage. We also do have a YouTube channel, YouTube/rpgsite.net. You can obviously follow us on Twitter at rpgsite. As for this podcast, we are here every week. So stay tuned because we have a certain release coming out within a week that we will be able to talk about at length 7 days from now.
Ooh.
Yeah. So until then, take care, stay safe. We'll talk to you next time.
SaGa.